Hello. Before we begin, I want to be completely transparent. I am not a neutral interviewer. I fully support Ukraine's fight for freedom and sovereignty. This conversation comes from a place of solidarity with the Ukrainian people and deep respect for those, both Ukrainian and foreign, who've taken up arms to defend it. This is not an attempt at false balance. This is a platform to share the story of someone who chose to stand on the right side of history. Today we're speaking with Watchman, a foreign volunteer who traveled to Ukraine in March of 2022, shortly after the Russians' full-scale invasion began. He served with the Norman Brigade, later with the Ukrainian National Guard, and finally with the 49th Battalion, also known as Karpatska Sich, where he took part in the partial Kharkiv counteroffensive, including heavy fighting near Izium. After 6 months on the front line, he was wounded and medically evacuated in September. He's here to reflect on his experience, the battles, the brotherhood, and the personal cost of war. Let's start at the beginning. Before the bullets in the battlefield, who was the fighter before the war, and what compelled him to step into it?
So I was born in Massachusetts. I joined the Army when I was 18 years old. I wanted to serve in the infantry, to serve my country. That was my main motivation for going in, just patriotism. And I wanted to serve in the infantry because I wanted to be a warfighter. I figured that's what the Army does. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to be the warfighter. I didn't want to be a pogue or something. I served in the Army for 3 years, and I went to Korea for 9 months deployment. When I was there, I was actually in a different brigade first. When I went to 1st Cavalry Division, I was in 3rd Brigade first, and then I actually volunteered for the deployment to go to Korea because they were saying, "Oh, we need people for this deployment." 1st Brigade is shorthanded, so I volunteered for it. And then I got out of the Army after my initial contract, and I was just traveling the country randomly, and I did some volunteer border patrol and some things like that. I protected some businesses during the George Floyd riots because people wanted to burn businesses down for no reason. So I was just doing things like that, just kind of wandering through life, doing random things. And then I saw the invasion of Ukraine. The Russia invaded Ukraine, and then I saw that Zelensky was creating the International Legion, and he made a public statement calling foreigners to come serve in Ukraine. So I took up that opportunity.
What motivated you to answer Zelensky's call?
Well, basically just my background for one. I was in the Army, so I was trained for it. That's what I did for 3 years, and then in 3 years the Army never sent me to war. You join the Army, you raise your right hand, and you think that I could possibly die, and you get that in your head that I might, especially joining the infantry, I might go to war, I might die. But then 3 years comes, and you just train for 3 years and you never do something. It's like if you went to school for 4 years, to college for 4 years to be an engineer, and then after the 4 years you never end up engineering anything, right? It's kind of like a letdown. So that was one reason, just to actually use my training, and I wanted the war experience. Kind of some people might think that's a weird reason, but that's just what it is. And the second reason is just a genuine reason that I believe in the cause. I believe in the sovereignty of nations. I believe in having more nations in the world is better than having less nations. If just like China and Russia and America and Britain or something, and we just have 4 empires in the world, this isn't very conducive to freedom in the world. The more countries you have, the more options you have in the world. The more, one country can experiment on this, freedom. Look at Singapore, right? Singapore is just this tiny city-state of 10 million people. They split from Malaysia, right? And now look at them, they're the richest country in the world, per capita. They're the richest country in the world. So, you have more experimentations of more countries. That's basically why it's wrong for another country to invade a country. You shouldn't impose your will on other people. And the country Ukraine, They share a lot of values that I believe in. Like, when they did the Maidan Revolution in 2014, it was actually like, grounded in a lot of libertarian principles that I believe in. Like they wanted, Western freedoms. They wanted to cut the corruption of the state. Um, you know, and even like Ukraine, they have a strong Second Amendment movement there. Um, and then like 2014, it was just like the volunteers. It was like the people. There was like no Ukrainian army at all in 2014 because the pro-Russian government before that they just like gutted the army. Like just because if Russia invades like one day, then we won't have an army to defend ourselves. What the Russian government wanted. So it was actually the people of Ukraine that like volunteered. They just like got, like you can get a hunting permit in Ukraine. So they just had rifles from their hunting permits and they just went to the front line to fight against like Russian tanks coming in. So I think that, like not only is it wrong to invade a country just because, right, like to impose your will on other people, but it's especially wrong to invade that country because of the ideals that those people believe in. It's not just like one communist country invading another communist country. No, it's one communist country trying to invade, a country that wants freedom. Like the people genuinely there want freedom. So that's why it's very wrong. I want to stand for a country like, of course, like they didn't get all the changes they wanted from the 2014 revolution, the revolution of dignity. But that was because for one, they were fighting a war, and two, like a lot of times corruption is just very deeply embedded. Even if you try to get rid of it at the highest level, the lower levels, it's still gonna stay. I guess a third reason that I went, it could possibly just be like it's in my blood. As weird as that sounds, but I am from Polish blood, and so I can imagine that my Polish ancestors were resisting Russian tyranny at one point. So it could just be in my blood.
That's the third reason is kind of funny, Watchman. But the first reason, talking about you wanted to experience war, I think probably a lot of foreigners go there for that reason. I don't think anyone's showing up to the war thinking I don't want to experience the war. But do you know that?
Anyone who says that they want that, they're just lying. Because
Yeah.
that's like, if you say that, the average person looks at you like you're some sort of sociopath, like, oh, you just want to kill people. So some people lie about it and they say, oh, no, that's not my reason. But, that's just what it is. And men for thousands of years have wanted to go to war. It's just what it is.
How did your family or friends react to your decision to join in March?
Um, well, I remember my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, but when I told her, he said basically, don't go. And then she said, oh, like I said, oh, I'm gonna go. And then she said, oh no, don't go. What will I do if you die? And then I just told her, no, my decision's made. I'm gonna go. And then she just accepted it. She's like, oh, okay. And I guess my mom had a similar reaction, like, don't go. Like, why do you want to go? But I just told her like that's my decision. That's what I'm gonna do. And then she just accepted it. Because I already have done things like that in the past, so she just kind of accepted that that's how I am. But at first she tried to tell me not to go. Like, why would you want to do that? But then she actually ended up paying for my plane ticket to Poland. I was fully expecting me to just pay it myself, but then she paid it for me. So that actually helped me out because I had more disposable funds when I was over there. I remember that my mom, she told a family friend, like whose son, like her friend, her son was in Iraq, a combat veteran from Iraq, and he was supposed to come talk to me, probably trying to tell me not to go or something. But I guess what ended up happening is one of his friends from Iraq ended up committing suicide. So then he got like depressed. So he never came to talk to me. I doubt he would have changed my mind, but that was supposed to happen.
That is an interesting turn of events there. Don't really know what to say to that, but so when you got to Poland and you crossed the border into Ukraine, what happens there? Like, how do you go from crossing the border into the Norman Brigade of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a story for me. it wasn't so straightforward. It could have been, but pretty much what happened is that I was in a Discord channel for like Volunteers for Ukraine Discord channel. It's also a subreddit. And there I met some other guys, like 3 other guys who wanted to go to Ukraine. So we just planned to meet at the airport in Krakow, Poland. And so me and another American, we arrived like early, like I forget what time it was. Like I don't know if it wasn't early in the day, maybe in the afternoon, but we arrived there. But then like we arrived around the same time, I think. But then I think I arrived first, and then I waited like a half hour, an hour for him. But then there was 2 other Irish people who were with it coming to meet us, and they weren't getting in until like late at night. So we basically were just like sleeping in the airport, like taking a nap or something, and we're just waiting for them there like for hours. I remember like this was like my first experience to the war, because at the airport, you saw like the Ukrainian refugees there, like the women and children at the airports, and like you could tell they were Ukrainian because like they had all their bags, like they were moving their whole life, right? So you could tell they were refugees. And but yeah, so then we waited for them, and then I think so once they got there, I guess we got a hotel, like the group decided to get a hotel for the night. And then we got the hotel in Krakow, and after that we woke up in the morning, and then we tried to go to the embassy in Krakow to try to like see about joining the army, like just at the embassy there. We applied, so me and the other American applied to the embassy, like in the American embassy, but they never replied to us. And then the Irish guys, they applied also, and then the embassy, their embassy in Ireland did reply to them, and they just gave them like some contact, like, oh, this guy can like give you a ride to the border or something like that, and then he'll bring you to the Legion. But so what ended up happening is like we were getting paranoid, and like when we were at the airport, there was like these other foreigners who were coming up to us, and they were telling us like that don't join the Legion, it's suicide. And then they were saying like, oh, don't go with this guy, because this guy like is a Russian agent or something, or he'll just bring you to this unit and then you'll get killed or something. I forget the whole story. And then there was like this guy who was drunk, like a different guy who was drunk, and he was coming here and he said, oh, I got rejected at the border, they didn't even let me in the country. So there was just all these rumors going around, and we don't know like who's telling the truth and what, or who's a Russian agent, and anything. We don't know anything. We just showed up, right? Like we don't know anything. And then here we are, like other guys who are seemingly like us, right? Like, oh, another foreigner who wants to do the same thing as me, and he's telling me all these bad things. So then like the contact that the Irish people had from their embassy, that was like the same guy, like the same name as the guy who came up to us at the airport and said, oh, don't go with this guy because he's the bad guy, and he'll just bring you to this unit, and you'll just go to be cannon fodder or something. So basically we didn't trust to go with him, so we went to the embassy ourselves. And then once we got to the embassy in Krakow, it was just like a line out the door, like onto the street, of just all Ukrainian refugees, like women and children, just out at the embassy. So it's a consulate, right? So we just were like, oh, well, we're not going to wait all day in the line. So we just decided to get a taxi, and we split the taxi 4 ways, and we went from Krakow to the border. And once we got to the border, so we had to get out on foot from the taxi on the border. And then so we got out in the taxi, and I remember like we asked the border guards, they were like wearing like military like fatigues or something, but we just asked the border guard, like the Polish border guards, like, oh, how do we cross the border? They just pointed us over there. And then that was like one of the first times like the war really set in, because at the airport you saw some of the refugees, and at the embassy we saw them. But when we were at the border, like the border where you walk across it at the foot crossing, it was like all just like a line of women and children in their suitcases and stuff, just going into Poland, like a huge line of people. And we were just like, and like they were waiting for the bus. That's why the line was kind of like, like stopping. But it was like a huge line of people. So we were just looking at them, and they're like, because their face is just like terrible, right? Because they don't know what they're gonna do next. Like they're just gonna go to a new country they've never been to. So they're you can see it in their face. And and then like we're crossing the border, and the only other people who are crossing the border are just other men to go fight, or like whoever, right? So they're like aid workers, humanitarian aid workers. There's no women and children crossing to go back. So that's when it really sets in, like, oh well, all these people are trying to flee the country, and we're the only idiots who are trying to enter. So that was like second guessing yourself a little bit, like, oh, is this what I want to do? All these people are leaving. Is it a good idea? And then once we got across the border, I remember like we were reading on Reddit, like on Reddit people were saying, oh, just tell the border guards you want to join the military and they'll do something. But when we crossed, just like we went up to the border guard, just the lady who stamps your passport, and then we were like, I want to join the army. She just looked at us and then looked back at our passport and stamps it and just gives us our passport. And she probably didn't speak English, right? And then we're just like, what do we do? Like, she just gives us back our passport and says bye. Like, what do we do? So we just like walk further, and then there's like this guy at a little like set up tent, and like one of those canopy tents or whatever, and he's wearing like a blue reflective vest. Like I guess he was a police officer or something like that. But it was just like, you want to know he's a police officer. It's just like a blue reflective vest, like for construction or something. I don't know what that guy was. And he was just telling us like, oh, you want to join the Legion? And we're like, yeah. And so he just like gives us a ride. And I was like kind of second guessing, like, oh, I don't want to take a ride from anyone once they're a Russian spy. So we just like, so we took the ride from them, I guess, and then, but it wasn't even a far walk. It's like 1 kilometer away or something. And they bring us to like this school, and the school was being used, like it wasn't an active school. It was just being used to like mostly just to like if the Ukrainian refugees, like the women and children, they were going to cross the border. So they traveled all day across country, and then now they're at the border, so they're going to like sleep there for the night. And then in the morning, they'll do the border crossing. So that's what the school was set up for. So there's a bunch of refugees in there also. And they put us on the top floor of there. Like all the Legion fighters or all the foreigners are going to join the Legion. They put us on the top floor of that school, and, they fed us and they gave us food and everything. And it was pretty great. Like, they gave us like mattresses, like little foam, camping mattresses to sleep on, like in case we didn't bring our own. So they took care of us good. Like, and then in the morning, we were supposed to go and like take the bus to the Legion base, and that's where we'll actually join. So, but what ended up happening is that there is this guy who is there, and he's telling everybody all this stuff like, oh, I'm a French Foreign Legion colonel, and I have connections to this militia commander, like this volunteer battalion, this militia commander who's here in Lviv. So, hey guys, like instead of going to the Legion, and you're just going to be used as cannon fodder in the trenches of Kiev, right? And you're just all going to die. Instead, come with me, and we'll just be our own unit. We'll separate by ourselves. This militia officer, he'll give us the weapons. And so we'll kind of work under him, but we'll also kind of, be our own thing and have our own leadership and do our own thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to protect the refugee humanitarian corridor from Kyiv to Lviv to the border, right? And because, we don't know what's going to happen, like the Belarusians, they might come down from the north, and this could have been true because nobody knows what was going to happen in the first weeks of the war. Because this was in March, right? And Russia invaded in like February 27th or something. So this was like March 10th, March 11th. And so this was still the first weeks of the war. And so there was like, oh, the Belarusians, they can come down from the north, and they can cut off the humanitarian corridor for all those refugees trying to get across. So we're just going to guard that. And so if the Belarusians invade, we'll fight them. And so it was basically everybody at the school. It was like a group like mentality sort of thing. Everybody was like, "Well, if everybody's doing it, I'm going to do it." So that everybody did it, right? And so everybody just followed this random guy who said he was a French-born Legion colonel. And then like he hijacked the whole thing, right? Like, so then he tells us, "Okay, so we're going to get on the bus, and you know, we're not going to go to the Legion base. We're going to go meet the militia commander and we're going to go to the armory there, and we're going to get all our weapons just day one." And that's how it's going to work. But, he's just making all this up, right? And I don't know this at the time. I figured this out later that he's making all this up. But the Ukrainian officer, the military officer who's in charge of like the school area to bring the foreigners to the Legion base, he doesn't know any of that, right? He thinks that they're going to get on the bus and they're going to go to the Legion, they're going to sign a contract, then we're going to bring them somewhere, right, to fight. But the guy, this guy, he speaks in like an Australian accent or something, like half Australian, half British. I don't know. This is a weird guy, right? And so they said, "Oh, we're going to go get our weapons at the armory from this militia commander." And then we get on the bus, and he's telling us all this stuff, like, "Oh yeah, we're blah 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 blah." Like he's telling us all this stuff along the bus ride, and then we get off the bus, we look around, and we're like, "We're at the Legion base." You can see like all these foreigners in formation, right? Like, we're at the Legion base. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, we're at the Legion base." But the problem is that the driver and the Ukrainian commander, he lied to me, and he just brought us there, and he told us we were going to the armory, but now we're here. And then he said, "Oh yeah, but we're just going to get our weapons here at the Legion base, right?" So the militia commander, that guy doesn't exist anymore. We're just going to get our weapons at the Legion base. And then we get off the bus, and then this guy, like, he goes into this room with this Ukrainian commander, and he goes inside the building, and we're just all waiting out there, wondering what's going to happen next, just talking to each other. And then he comes back and he says, "Oh, well, okay, we're not going to do it. I'm just going to get back on the bus. You guys are free to make up your own mind, but if you go with them, then they're going to just send you to the trenches of Kiev, and you're going to all die. And so just don't, but I'm getting on the bus, and he won't let me join anyways because I'm above 60. Like, I think he said that. So it's like, okay, you guys make your own choice." So then everybody just gets on, right? Like, because my mindset was, well, I don't know if this guy is telling the truth or not. So if he's telling the truth, then I missed the opportunity. And if he's lying, I can just come back here and join later, right? So that was my mindset. And then everybody gets on the bus, like the whole bus that's trying to join the Legion, like they all just leave. Like we're like, okay, we're all gonna leave. So a whole busload of potential recruits just leave because of this guy. And then he says, "Okay, so now we're gonna go to the town, and we're gonna speak to the police. We're gonna go to the police station, and we're gonna speak to them, and they're gonna give us some mission, and like our original mission of protecting the humanitarian corridor." So then we get off this bus, and we're in this like random little town or something. And then he goes and speaks to, I don't know who he speaks to, but he says he's going to go speak to the police. And then he comes back and he says, "Oh no, we can't do that. We can only do a training. So we can just like do a training of the like Ukrainian soldiers, and they only want people with like combat experience or like military experience, because a bunch of the guys, they were just like random civilians from Britain mostly, and they didn't have any experience. So like, more than half of the people didn't have any military experience. So then we just picked like 10 of us who had military experience. And then we said, okay, so this is our new group. Everybody else, like, get lost or something, like figure out what you're going to do. So I think like 3 or 4 people maybe ended up going back to the Legion. And then most of the people that were there ended up leaving Ukraine and going back home. Like, all the 3 guys that I met with the airport, so all those 3 guys ended up going home, and like, oh yeah, everybody just basically split, and it was just like 10 of us left or something. But the American I was with, he was like a combat veteran from Afghanistan, I think, and he was like also a sergeant, like an E5 in the army, and he was supposed to be with us, and then he was supposed to go with us to do the training, but he was only there because he was like having problems with his wife. And so he basically told me like, "Oh, I just came just to make my wife mad." So then, like, he must have had a conversation with his wife or something to make up for the fighting. And then there was these other two British people. So I think one of the British guys was a veteran from the British Army, and then the other British guy was active duty British Army. So they were freaking out like that. Oh, I'm AWOL. Like they're gonna find out eventually. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have went AWOL to fight in Ukraine. So those two British guys and then the American, they just split from us in the middle of the night. Like, you know, we're thinking like, okay, we're gonna go to sleep and we're gonna wake up and then we're gonna do this thing where we're gonna talk to the police and do the training thing, right? Okay, so they didn't tell us anything, and they just literally deserted us in the middle of the night. Like they didn't say, "Hey guys, this isn't for me. I'm gonna go home." Blah blah. No, they just left in the middle of the night while we're sleeping. Didn't say a word. So, you know, I guess it's better they don't fight, right? And I mean, you can't trust them. And then after that, like we wake up after they left, and then we're at that same school. So they actually brought us back to the school, right? This is how nice the Ukrainians were, right? Like we wasted all their time, and we went to the Legion base, and then we said, "Oh, actually, I changed my mind. I'm not going to join." So then they put us up again for another night and fed us for another night and breakfast, right? And fed us, and then even though we're not going to join, and we wasted all their time and their gas, right? And they still put us up for another night. That's just how nice the Ukrainians were. And then we were waiting outside the school at the bus stop, and then the guy said, "Oh, we're gonna go to the Lviv, and we're gonna do our training to start training the Ukrainian soldiers and police or whatever." And then he gets a call, and then he says in the call like, "Oh, like it's not gonna happen. Like this guy, he's out of town or something. My contact's away, so we can't do it." And then, so he says, "Oh, I'm just gonna go back to Poland because I don't want to stay here. There's no hotel. There's no hotel rooms in Lviv because there's a bunch of refugees. So we'll never find a hotel in Lviv. So let's go back to Poland." And at this time, there's like maybe 5 of us left or something. And so then I was just kind of at this point, I was like, "Oh, this is stupid." But I was like following the group. I was like, "Oh, whatever. I'll just do it." And so we go back to Poland, and then once we cross back the border into Poland on that same foot crossing, and then once we get there, like, you know, it's like the whole humanitarian camp, like the Red Cross or whatever, and the World Central Soup Kitchen and all those people setting up for the refugees. And so we go there, and I'm just sitting there, and so okay, so I forgot something. So that night that we're at the school is when you can look this up on the news. Like there's news articles about this. There was an attack on the Legion base, right? So there was, and we heard the explosions actually that night. Like when people were standing outside. I don't smoke, but other people were standing outside and smoking, and I was with them just talking. And we heard the explosions from the base, and we didn't really know what it was at the time, like because it's just a random explosion, right? How do you know where it is? But after that, we looked it up on the news, and the news was reporting that the Legion base got hit. So even though this guy was a liar and he was a scammer, he might have saved my life because I ended up not being in the base at that time, and I could have got blown up on the base because like over 70 foreigners died, I think, from that missile attack.
I think it was 80 something.
So yeah, that was a blessing from God in disguise. And yeah, so then anyways, we went back to the like it was like a whole makeshift camp set up for the refugees. So what ended up happening is I spoke to some foreigners. Like there was one foreigner who was there. He said he was a former Dallas cop. I don't know if that's true, but he said he was at the Legion base when they got blown up, and then he came across after us. And then he said, "Oh no, that's like I'm not doing that. They just set us up in these camps all together, and then we all got blown up because we were so close. And then we were just hiding out in the woods after that." So he said, "Oh no." And
Hello?
like, "Oh, we're gonna do it tomorrow," and then it never came. "Oh, just wait. Like I have to wait for the call for this guy." Then that never came. But what we ended up doing was we stayed at the refugee camp for about 2 weeks, and I mean it wasn't that bad because we had a place to stay and we were getting fed for free, you know. And like I didn't really come with that much money because I thought I'm just gonna join the army, you know. I came with enough money, but not like money to just live forever. So, so we basically ended up staying at that refugee camp for like 2 weeks, and we were just like staying in one of the buildings there, and we were helping out, like carry things or do whatever needs to be done for the food that they're giving out to the refugees. So we were just helping out there, and we are just trying to like meet other foreigners as they were crossing, that sort of thing. Um, and then eventually, like this guy, he said he was going to go to the embassy. And like the whole time he was just like feeding. So he said I'm going to go to the Ukrainian embassy to talk to them about, and I'm going to get our militia papers so we can operate by ourselves and blah, 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 all these lies. And eventually he just said, oh, you just crossed the border by yourself and I'll follow you later. And at that point, like all of us knew he was like just, full of shit. And we kind of just understood at that point, well, we just crossed the border anyways because we wanted to cross ourselves. And then this like new guy who was like saying he was like this other British guy, he was saying he was like an SAS and something. I don't know if it was true, but that Australian French-born Legion Colonel scammer guy put him in charge. And then that guy said, oh, we're gonna go to Kyiv and we're gonna do this, training. We're gonna train these guys or something. And then at that time, I was just like following them, like just like because we're traveling together, and like I don't know where the train station is. And then we went together to Kyiv, but then I was already talking to the Norman Brigade at that time. I just messaged them online, like I think through WhatsApp or something. I got their contact somehow, and they told me like send your D214 or something, and I sent it. And they had just was scheduled to arrive to them. So at this time, Kyiv was still under siege. So we got off the train in Kyiv, and like some of the windows of the train station were like blown out and stuff, and there was like tape on some of the windows and stuff like that. And it was like a ghost town there, almost like no cars except around the train station immediately. Everything was closed. There was just a bunch of refugees in the train station waiting for their train out of Kyiv. You could like hear the fighting, like you could hear the shelling outside the city, like from a distance away. It wasn't like a close explosion, but it was like, you could hear like the far away sounds of the war. And it was like, there was just like, hundreds or something of just police officers, just like, police officers with like full kit and like rifles, just like sitting outside the train station and inside the train station. And then I remember like eventually I asked one of them, like, how do you get food? There was like no food in the train station. There was just like coffee and like maybe some like bread snacks, but there was no like meals you could buy in the food. So I asked one of them, like, how do you eat? And he was like, oh, like, and it was like, you come to fight? I was like, yeah, we're here to be soldiers, but we need food right now. And he's like, oh yeah, come with me. So he brings us like down we leave the train station, and then this guy didn't speak good English, by the way, so we're just like barely communicating through like Google Translate and hand gestures or whatever. But so he's like, okay, come with me, and then we go outside the train station. We walk like, I remember, to the left or something, and then we walk like a block or two away to this random building. We go up the stairs, and then on the second floor there's like a cafeteria, and it's just like only soldiers and police eating there. And then maybe this guy spoke a little bit in English, but then I was asking him like, well, how do people eat here? He was telling us like everything's closed because of the war, like the shops aren't allowed to operate, everything's closed. And then I was like, so how do people eat here? He's like, well, I don't know, they don't. I was like, what if they're a child? He's like, oh, well, if they're a child, we'll give them food for free, but the adults, they're on their own. And it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty crazy. So we went up to the second floor cafeteria, and they fed us. Like, we didn't have to pay. It was free. And it was just only soldiers eating there. And that's why I was wondering, like, it's only soldiers here, so how does anybody else eat? And, I think most people, like, only half the city left, right? Because I think only 2 million people left out of a city of 4 million. So there's still 2 million people in the city during the war. Like, when there was the close battles going on in Kyiv. So yeah, after that, we just got on our next train to go to Dnipro, and we met our contact in Dnipro. He picked us up at the train station in Dnipro, and then he brought us to this base of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. So the Norman Brigade was attached to the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, think we ended up joining a 3rd battalion. It was, and we just we stayed, I think, one night in this base, with all the Ukrainian soldiers. And then in the morning we went to the front, but it wasn't he told us it was the front, so we're like, oh, we're going to the front, but it was 20 kilometers from the front, and we went to this town that was closer to the front, and we went to the base there. But then when we got there, the other foreigners were actually at the front, and then we just got to the base that was 20 kilometers from the front. So then we had to wait for a week or something for them to come back. And that's it. That's how I joined Northern Brigade.
All right. After watching part 1 of my interview with Watchman, there is 6 parts in this series. This part covered his motivations, to how he got to Poland, to crossing the border into Ukraine, and how he ended up in the Northern Brigade. Stick around for part 2 to hear the rest of his story. Thank you for watching. In our last episode, we explored what drove Watchman to leave home, travel halfway across the world, and step into a completely different country's war. We heard his past, personal motivations, and the journey that brought him to Ukraine. That story ended with him arriving in the Northern Brigade, his first stop on a path that would take him through multiple units. In this episode, we followed that path, tracing his movement from unit to unit and the experiences that shaped him along the way. All right, and with that, what happened in the Northern Brigade?
And once we got to the Northern Brigade, it was it was just me and one other guy, another American. And like I said, we were waiting for a week, and then there was 2 other guys who came with us. So there was the 4 of us. We were just waiting there. And then once we get once the Harolf, so Harolf died, rest in peace, but he died way after this. But Harolf was the leader, and then once they got back, we were just wondering, well, when we're gonna go to the front and all this stuff. It was I don't know, there was a few spots at the front because this was just a volunteer battalion. So we were just here in this another school that was turned into a military base, not an active school. And it was 20 kilometers from the front. So we were just waiting there, and we were just doing some trainings every day. We would do heavy weapons training, AT trainings. We would learn the AT-4. We would learn mines, how to arm and disarm mines. We'd learn different Soviet mines, the anti-tank mine, or the butterfly mine. We had this one guy there, this Ukrainian, and this guy was a badass. And he was a former Soviet Afghan veteran. And he just had this bald head. He was a little guy, you wouldn't think he's all that, but he was a badass, right? And he would teach every class we ever had, on the RPG or anything. He would always teach it, and he only spoke a few words in English. But so it wouldn't just be foreigners at the class. It would be us foreigners, and then there would be Ukrainians there too. Different classes varied, but. So he would be speaking in all these different languages. He would be mixing in his English and then his Russian and then his Ukrainian. So he's speaking 3 languages at once. So we're sometimes sitting there as foreigners what is he talking about? Because he's speaking, Ukrainian or something. But then the Ukrainians were also sitting there well, what is he talking about? Because he's speaking English, right? This is crazy. So, but this guy was a badass, because he was, like I said, he was a Soviet Afghan veteran, but he looked young. You wouldn't know he's that old. But he also was in 2014, in the initial 2014 war. He did evacs at the Donetsk airport, at the second battle of Donetsk airport. So he did that. But yeah, we were just waiting there. The one thing I remember about that place is the bathroom was so bad. You went to go take a pee, and it was the worst smell of your whole life, because it was just these rows of outhouses. These squat toilets, the worst smell of my whole life, the worst bathroom in Ukraine I've ever had. And But we're just waiting there, and like all these other foreigners, they were all like too anxious to go to the front. They're like always telling Herolf, our leader, like, "Oh, when are we going to the front? When are we going to the front?" Blah blah blah. And then people would show up like for 3 days, and they're like, "Oh, we're not at the front in 3 days," and then they would leave. And then so the Ukrainians have to spend like all that money and stuff, just giving them rides back and forth and wasting the gas. And at this time in the war, like the gas was like scarce. Like you would have like lines and lines to the gas pump, like it's the apocalypse or something. And I don't know. I didn't understand those people. Like some of those people, they're just like, "Oh, I just have a month off work. I want to just fight during that month." Like I don't know. I don't think that's how a war works. You don't just go for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and then just get your experience and then leave. But that's what these guys wanted to do. So they just kept bothering her. "Oh, when are we going? When are we going?" You know, like we could hear like some of the explosions in the distance of the front, but you know, we weren't that close. Sometimes like a helicopter would fly over, and Herolf would be like, "Oh, get all your folks, get on this helicopter's flying around," and we wouldn't know if it's Russian or Ukrainians, but I think like 90% of the time they were just Ukrainian helicopters. And we'd like get our AT4s, and it's like Herolf is like, "Get the AT4s," like trying to shoot down with the AT4, like shooting a helicopter with an AT4. But yeah, eventually we went to the front. But we were just like second line there. Like, I don't know, it was like 5 kilometers away from the Russians, and we were just like manning this house. We were just staying in this house there, and like we just like in case the Russians break through. So we would just do like bridge guard. Like we would guard this bridge, and we dug some trenches there. I'm sure those trenches are still being used to this day because the front line never moves. But we dug some trenches there, and like we'd get shelled there because at that time like 5 kilometers is close enough to get shelled, so we'd always get shelled. Like we'd get grad missiles coming in. It's like it's like gets closer to you every time. You don't know when it's gonna stop. So the grad is like kind of like everyone thinks it's scary because it's like a line that's coming at you. The explosions are getting closer and closer, so the grad's just kind of shooting from the truck, and then it gets closer and closer to you. But we'd get like artillery shelled. But besides that, not too much happened there. Eventually, we left there. We were there for like 2 weeks, and then like we rotated out. I wanted to stay there longer, but we rotated out, I guess. And then Herolf like said, "Oh well, now we're done with the front." And then like at one time, Norman Brigade had like 30 people there, and then they all left, and then it was just like 10 of us at the front. We had this like Ukrainian, like this 18-year-old guy there. So the thing about the Ukrainian Volunteer Army is like there's no contracts there. No one was official in the army or anything. They're like a militia, right? And it's basically Pravi sector, if people know what that is. It's like right sector, but they're like not right sector. They're like I don't even know. But there's like a more prominent version of right sector. And that's not it. That's like Ukrainian Volunteer Corps. And then this is the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. But the thing about that group is they're just volunteers, right? So like I'd say like 10% of the guys, 10 or 20% of the people who were there, the Ukrainians, they were like veterans from 2014 because, you know, Ukrainian Volunteer Army fought in 2014. That's how they got established. And I remember like one of the guys we were talking to, he told us like, "Oh, I fought in 2014, I fought in 2015, but then, you know, the war died down with the Minsk agreement. And then I went back to my normal civilian life." And then he said, "But then when the war started again, 2022, I just got like my you know, my rifle, I got my gear, you know, my plate gear and stuff, and I just, you know, I just linked back up with these guys, and now I'm here as a volunteer again." So like 10-20% of the guys were like that, you know. It's like kind of, it was their thing, right? Like they're a soldier, like they'll come when they're called. So those guys are cool. But the rest of the guys, they were like college students. Like they were just like college students who don't want to join the army. Because if you join the army or you get mobilized or conscripted, you have to serve like 3 years. Or you have to serve like until the end of martial law or whichever comes first. I don't know. So basically, they didn't want to sign a contract and join. And then in Ukraine at that time, conscription was only at 27 anyways. So you didn't even have to join until you were 27. But then if you did join, you were like obligated for a certain amount of time. Now the conscription age is 25, and then I think they're talking about lowering it even more soon. But yeah, so you would have a bunch of guys like that. There's like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. It was like, they were just like, you know, they would just want to do a couple months or something and then go back to college or something. And that was, you know, their idea. And that's what the Ukrainian Volunteer Army is for, just to have people serve a short time or something. Or some of them would just go just to get the training in case, like, you know, somewhere like near them is attacked. So it was kind of like TDF. But we ended up leaving. So I ended up leaving that place. I decided at that time, like, I wanted a contract. I wanted to get paid. And Herolf gave us like some leave. He's like, "Oh, just go somewhere, take a vacation." And then I just ended up never coming back. Like, I ended up texting him saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna come back." And I found this other unit so I was in Lviv, and I was just hanging out there with one of the guys from Norman Brigade and a couple and another guy we met. And then we ended up meeting these other two random foreigners, and they were telling us like, "Oh, we have a thing that we're going to work with the National Guard, and we're going to do a medical evac." And so then we ended up going like back to Dnipro, and we met like, and we ended up staying in a hospital, right, which was totally like not supposed to happen. So the nurses and doctors were telling us like, don't wear military uniforms to wear civilians, because we weren't supposed to be staying there. I'll get to why in a second, but basically our idea was is that we're gonna do a medical evac with the National Guard, and we'll just be the evac team, right? Like, we had some trained medics and stuff. Like, one guy was a Afghan veteran. He was a medic in the U.S. Army, and then there was another girl. She died later, but call sign was Snake. But she was in nursing school, I guess, before. I think she dropped out. She had some experience, right? And so, you know, there were some medics there, and then there's other people who were just like, you know, going to be the shooters for the medical evac, and then a driver. But what ended up happening is that we ended up just like going from base to base, which, you know, looking back at it, it's a little bit cool. But we ended up just going base to base with the like different National Guard bases. Like, I know one of the units was Dnipro 1, and we just like trained them. Like, we were training them on like basic stuff, like first aid, you know, how to put on a tourniquet, like I don't know why they didn't know that stuff, but we're just training them on basic stuff, like how to do a buddy rush, like buddy team bounding, how to, like, I don't know, how to just shoot, like just basic stuff. We did some training on our own, like, because we got to shoot a few times. But the problem with that unit is that we were being led by this Latvian guy. He set everything up. So he spoke Russian because he was Latvian. And he was like, we were with this Ukrainian, I don't even think he was an officer. I think he was just like an NCO. But we were with him. And I don't know what was the problem or who was the scammer, but maybe both of them, because the Ukrainian guy was saying, like, we're going to get our contracts. Like, he even took our passports, took photocopies of our passports and everything. And he said, "Oh, we're going to get you a contract, like, just tomorrow or next week or blah, blah, blah." You know, the date kept changing. And he just kept saying, "Oh, yeah, we're going to get your contracts, and then you're going to do the medical thing." But all we really did is, like, he just put us in a, like, you know, he put us in a place to stay. We didn't have to pay anything. We would get food for free. We would eat lunch at like the military base where we would train the National Guard that day. So this guy, he was like part of the military intelligence directorate, but like Ukraine has two. So there's one for the army and there's one for the National Guard, right? So it's GOR, like GUR, like the military intelligence. And so he was part of that, but he would just like bring us to different bases because I guess he's intelligence, so he can go wherever. But he would just bring us there, and we would just train like this this random unit, and then we would like just help train that random unit. Like just keeping us occupied, I guess, like just random. And so, and then so I think what the deal was is that it was like a ghost unit. So he took all of our passports, and then he told the leadership, the higher ups above him, like, "Oh, I have all these foreigners in my unit, and so I need to get paid. Like, I have 30 guys. Give me 30 salaries." And then he just took the money. I don't know for sure, but I think that's what was happening because we never got our contract, and we never went to the front. We were just in Dnipro, and so. And he would like move us to different places. So the first place we were in a hospital. We definitely weren't supposed to be there. So that's like a violation, I guess, of the rules of war. And then there's just like 10 of us at that time though. And then we ended up going to like a UN refugee shelter. Like we didn't really know what it was at first. It just looked like a preschool, but the preschool was being used as a UN refugee camp, I guess. So then he brought us there. And then we stayed there, and then I don't know what happened with the Latvian guy. I didn't like the guy anymore or something, and then we ended up staying in this guy's junkyard, like this random guy's junkyard. But this guy was cool. Like he was a veteran from 2014, and then he ended up giving us like an RPG 22, right? It's like a small RPG. It's like a law. And he ended up we traded him a rifle for an RPG 22 because his ghost, or the Latvian guy, he had a rifle from the National Guard, and then that National Guard officer was mad because then the guy stole the rifle, I guess, and then he was that mad about it. But then we switched the rifle for the RPG, so we traded, which it just goes to show you the Second Amendment culture in Ukraine. Like this guy had an RPG just at his house. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, I guess he got it from the 2014 war, but still, like, it just tells you the Second Amendment culture there. And then he wanted a rifle, right? Like, why do you want a rifle? For his own protection, right? This is the Second Amendment culture there. And, but that guy, like, fed us and everything, like, just out of his own pocket. Because the National Guard guy ended up, like, dumping us. So then we stayed there for a week or something. And I think the Latvian guy, I don't know, I think he was also lying to us because he spoke Russian, and so how does he not know what's going on? I don't know for sure, but I mean, I think he was promised some sort of rank, but then maybe he also never got it because the Ukrainian guy was also like scamming him too. But I think the Latvian guy was like a little bit in on it, but then he ended up getting screwed also. I don't know, but it was like a waste of time. We were there for like a month or 2 months or something like that. And then when we were at that junkyard by that 2014 veteran, when he was putting us up there, we stayed at that junkyard for a week or two, I think. But then eventually, I guess the Latvian guy, he had a contact with Kozak, and so we ended up going there. So like at this time, there's 10 or 15 of us or something, and we ended up getting there. The Latvian guy, he had all these donations coming in. And like he had a lot of money coming in, and some people would donate him whole cars. Like people from Europe or Latvia or something would donate them old junker cars, and they would spray paint it green. And then we had those, and we just drove those ourselves. I remember we were driving to the front from Dnipro, and then the wheel just like came completely off the car, flew off the car, and we were like, "Oh!" Like it didn't come off, but we knew it was coming off, and it was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound good," and it was like almost off. And then we stopped the car and we had to fix it on the road. And then one of the lug nuts was bad, so we were only using like 2 out of the 4 lug nuts or something, just the rest of the way. And then yeah, we ended up getting to Kozak, and so this was like the first time it was ever legit in Kozak. So I got to siege in June. And I arrived in the country in March. So all this time, March to June, I was just trying to figure out something because I didn't join the Legion. If I just joined the Legion originally, it would have just been easier to get a contract and to go to fight in the war. But instead, I spent all this time, March to June, what's that, 3 months, just doing nothing, like being scammed basically by this guy. by these two guys, the French Foreign Legion colonel and the Ukrainian NCO from the National Guard. I mean, it was kind of cool with the National Guard because I saw like different bases. I saw like normal Ukrainian soldier life, I guess. And even National Guard is actually like a federal police unit in Ukraine, not like National Guard like in the U.S. It's like the same as National Guard in Russia. They have like the same thing. In some other countries probably, but they're like actually a federal police force, but like a paramilitary force almost. So they wear like straight green. But it's kind of cool, like seeing all their different bases and stuff and training with them. That was cool. But it was a waste of time overall. We didn't get a contract and we didn't get paid. But when I went to Siege, this was like the first time people were being legit with us. Like, it was like the first time, like this was like the real deal. Like we showed up and immediately we showed up and the base was only like, the first base we went, which was where the armory was and the headquarters of the unit was, that was only 18 kilometers from the front. So their whole like headquarters, their whole officer establishment and the armory was only 18 kilometers. And then we showed up to the building we were going to stay in. It was like an old tax office, I guess. That's what it was. We were staying at this old tax building that they used for the base. And like the first thing we go is like, there's a hole in the roof from like a cluster bomb. And that was like, oh, okay. Like, we're here at the front. And the guy, like the guy who speaks English, he's just showing us around. The Ukrainian guy, he's like a Ukrainian Canadian. He's showing us around. He's like, oh yeah, the bomb hit like a week ago. Went through the stairs. The whole ceiling and the stairs just had a hole from a cluster bomb. And then like we could see the other buildings in town like had holes in it also. There's like some impact shells on the road, like some holes on the ground. So we're like, oh yeah, we're here. And we stayed there maybe a week at that rear base. And then we got our weapons. And then at this time we were also just volunteers. So Karpatska Siege was originally a volunteer battalion also in 2014. And then they got deactivated, I think about 2016 or 2017. You guys can look it up for who's watching. And then they reactivated themselves in 2022 when the war started. So they fought in Kyiv first, but I wasn't there for that. I was getting scammed at that time. And then when we went from Dnipro, we went around to the city Izium. Like we were there south of it. And like in Kharkiv Oblast, basically. But not far from like Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast, near the tri-border. And but we went there right away. And so like when we showed up, the leader died. So like he's a very famous commander. I think Alexander Kutsin. I know his last name's Kutsin, but I might have got his first name wrong. But Alexander Kutsin. But he was the original commander of Karpatska Siege since 2014. So he created everything. Like he created the battalion himself, and you know he set up all the volunteer stuff, and then he reactivated it in 2022 by him and the other people, the other former people. But when we showed up, he died like that day we showed up, or that like the day or two after we showed up. And then so everybody was like kind of chaotic. They're like, oh, our leader died. What do we do now? Like we have to get a new leader, blah blah blah. But we just stayed there at the base, 18 kilometers away for like a week. And during that time, we got our weapons issued to us. We got some gear. If we were missing some gear, I mostly brought all my own gear. But if people didn't have gear, they would give them some like plate carriers or something, or helmets. And we got our weapons issued to us, and we signed contracts, but it wasn't official contracts. It was volunteer contracts, right? Just volunteer contracts, like to understand that you're volunteering and you might die, but you're not getting paid, right? And that there's no liability on the Ukrainian army. So at this time, Karpatska Siege was a volunteer battalion, or they used to be a volunteer battalion ever since 2014, and at this time they were like in transitioning. So then they were joining the official army and becoming like a real battalion of the army. And so they were going to be the 49th. This is what they are today, the 49th separate rifle battalion, and their separate rifle battalion, because before they were their own volunteer battalion. So they're not just going to be absorbed in some random brigade, I guess. So that's why they're a separate battalion. That's what it's called. But so we signed a volunteer contract, and then when we showed up, there's the other foreigners there. They're still my friends to this day, but we met them at the base, and they were actually leaving the front because before they were at the front, and they were also on volunteer contracts, and now they were leaving to go to a city, like a city in the west, within the western part of Ukraine, very far from the fighting. And they were going there to do all the paperwork to sign their contracts to be like official and get paid. And so then we showed up, and then like basically they were leaving as we came in. And then when we came in, then we like, so after all that was done, we actually went to the real front. And at this point, like, you know, we went to the front, and then we immediately went into like this school. And you can see this school on YouTube. If people want to look it up, just look up like Carpathian Siege or Carpathia Siege, Foreign Battalion or something like that, and you'll see this school. And then when we showed up, it's like completely blown up on the outside, right? Like the roof is gone. You know, there's holes in the walls, right? But it's like a 3 or 4 story school or something, but you know, it's blown up. And then we go into the basement, and immediately like, so they bring us into this room, and it smells so bad, and they used it like at the morgue or something for dead bodies, and it just smelled horrible, and the whole place smelled horrible. And then like you have to you know go to the bathroom under there, and then like where it's the bathroom, you can, it's exactly, they actually showed it in the video, and you see the bathroom, and it's just like all piles of poop there. It's just like completely gross. It was like this one room in the basement of the school that people were using for the bathroom, but then when they set us up to sleep, they set us up to sleep in this place that was like the morgue or something, and it also smelled bad from the dead bodies. And there was like a hole in it. There was like a hole in the basement from the wall, because you know how basements sometimes like it's not completely underground. A little part of it is like, you know, on the surface. So there's like a hole there from a bomb that exploded there. So then you're just thinking, well, I'm staying in this room that got bombed before. Again, maybe it's not lucky. But then the Ukrainians said, "Oh, you're going to be staying in that room, so you clean it and go fix the hole in the wall. Like there's some rocks over there, and there's some, you know, cement things over there. Go put them back into the wall, so then you don't get hit by shrapnel if another bomb falls." And I remember before that too, like, I forget it was before or after, but like we went, as soon as we got there, almost the base got bombed, right? Like it was a direct hit. It was like a direct hit onto the school roof, or like, not, the roof is gone, right? So onto the other floors of the school, and it was a direct hit. And then like you just like the whole building shakes. There's like dust falling from the ceiling, just like the movies, right? There's like dust falling from the ceiling, and then the Ukrainians are just there, like they're just on their phone because we had like a Starlink Wi-Fi in that basement. They're just on their phone watching like YouTube shorts, and it's like boom, and they're not fazed by it. They're just like watching their video, and then you're just sitting there, and you're just like the fresh meat. You just got there, and it's like, what is going on here? Like they would just get bombed, and nobody cares. It's just normal life. Like they're not even looking up like, oh, the ceiling's falling, like there's dust falling. They're just like watching their video, boom. Like what? And then we go out, and then
I'm sorry.
Right?
Where is this relative to the front line? Like to the zero line? How far away are you? Are you on the zero line at this point?
Well, it's not actually the zero line. It's just like 2 or 3 kilometers away or something.
All right, 2 or 3 kilometers. All right, go on.
But the thing is when you're like, if you're actually closer to the Russians, when you're actually on the zero line, like the Russians are only, you know, the other Russian infantry, they're only 500 meters from you or something, you know, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, right? But 800 meters to 200 meters they can be from you. So what that means is that the enemy artillery is actually not really firing at you all that much. It's different nowadays because of the drones, because drones are more accurate. So the FPV drones can just fly into you, and they don't have to worry about this. But at that time, there wasn't a lot of FPV drones or any at all. They had drones back then, but they would drop it they would just drop the like Maverick drone or whatever, and they would just drop an RPG shell at you or something. But when you're close, the enemy mortars or the enemy artillery doesn't want to fire at you because they're afraid that they're going to hit their own guys. And for one, the Russians weren't always accurate, right? They would shoot at us all day, and sometimes they would never hit us. And it's like they're just like they're training, right? Like they don't know how to hit you. And then also the what is it called? Like the distance, the danger area of
Danger
artillery or mortars. I think artillery is more, but for the danger area for mortars is like 300 meters. Like a shrapnel from a mortar, if it hits 300 meters away, it can kill you. But because the shrapnel will fly 300 meters from its impact point. So that's why actually when you're on the 0-0 line, you're actually not getting bombed as much. But if you're just 2 kilometers away, that's where all the artillery is happening, and also that's where your mortars is. That's where your like artillery is. That's where your tanks is. So then the enemy wants to hit your stuff, like your artillery. So it's actually sometimes more dangerous to be farther away than closer. I mean, that's kind of how the war works. But yeah, we were just like this base was like 2 or 3 kilometers away, and like they knew for sure we were in that school, right? So they just always hit it, and then so like it gets hit, right? And then it gets hit, and like I remember. So backing up a little bit, when we got out of the truck to go to that place, the Ukrainians were super on guard, and they were like rushing, like get your stuff out of the bag, like go straight down the stairs. Like they knew, like that place was a target. And that's like I guess where the Ukrainian commander Kutsin died. Like he was like smoking outside that place, and then he died. I don't know why he was just sitting there, or I don't really know the story to be honest. But yeah, he died right outside that stairwell. So and then I also remember like there was these German shepherds. There's like 2 or 3 German shepherds in that place, and one of the German shepherds ran out up the stairs to go outside, and then there was a bomb like right after he ran out the stairs. Like it got bombed right near where he ran out, and then you're like, oh, the dog died, and then you see the dog run back in, like, oh no, like the dog's scared, and it's like, oh, I guess he's alive, but that was a close call. And like so then we patched that hole in the ceiling, and then but like we had to go outside. Like some of us had to patch it from the inside, and then others had to go from the outside to patch it. And then we were like, the place just got bombed. We're gonna go outside here? That's too dangerous. But nothing happened. And then like right after that, like some hours after that, the first day we were there, some hours after that, like everybody's standing up, and like the Ukrainians are speaking in Ukrainian or whatever, and everybody's like on guard. Like, because remember when the bomb hits, everyone's just on their phone, boom, nobody cares. But now like there's something over the radio, and then everybody's standing up and listening to the guy speak, and we're just foreigners and we don't understand Ukrainian, and we're like, what's going on? Like everybody's on high alert, and then that Latvian guy, he speaks Russian, so then he was like, oh, let's go, we're gonna go bring the javelin, we're gonna get this javelin from these Czech guys, and then we're gonna go and get your kit ready. And so like 5 of us went out, and we were kind of like, this is crazy. The school just got bombed 3 times, and now we're just gonna walk outside, and we're a super target. And then we walked away. When we walked in formation up this hill, and then we went to this place where it overlooks like the whole valley, and we set up a javelin position there. And we didn't really know what was happening at the time, but I guess what happened is that we thought we were encircled, and we thought that the Russians were breaking through the 0 line, and so they set us up as extra reinforcements of the javelin team up onto this hill. And we were just sitting there, and there was like, when we got there was some Ukrainian trenches and stuff, and there were some Ukrainian people there on position, and we just sat up there and we waited there for a few hours or something. And the whole time we were there, we were like, and this is basically like how it is most of the time you're on position as an infantryman. You're just watching the war go on like over your head, and so the Russians will shoot, and then the Ukrainians shoot, and you're just watching everything go over your head, and it's like, and so like when you're infantry, you're like the observer of the war a lot of times, because the Russian artillery, and then there's Ukrainian artillery, and basically that's what we were doing when we were up there, and we were just like kind of looking down at the valley, see if there's any tanks coming, but nothing really happened. And then a few hours later, we went back into that school, and then eventually so we were there for like 2 days or something, getting our bearings. And then eventually they said, oh, you're going to go to the position, like on the 0 line. And so basically they told like our commander, our company commander, he would speak English, and he would tell us like, "Oh, you're gonna go to this place." But then he told us like, "Oh, but like nobody's ever really been there before. This like we're establishing a new position, so you're gonna be the first, like the front most people, and nobody's there right now, so you're gonna be the new guys there." And I was like, "Oh, okay. We're like fresh meat. We just showed up, and you're gonna just put us in the very new position." And he's like, "Yeah, I went there one time just to scout it, but we don't know. Like, there could be Russians there now, so let's go." And so we went there like
All right, wait, hold up.
in the early
Just a
morning.
moment. With that, we're gonna stop this part. From those long months drifting between units, waiting for the next step, to finally find a place in the ranks of the 49th Separate Assault Battalion, Watchman's path through Ukraine was anything but straightforward. The uncertainty, the searching, the liars, characters, and warriors along the way. All of it shaped a soldier who would soon face his first true trial in battle. In our next part, we step into those moments where everything changed, when the war was no longer a distant sound, but right in front of him. Join us for part 3, where we follow his first combat experiences on the front lines. Thanks for watching. Slava Ukraini. In our last episode, we traced Watchman's path through Ukraine, starting in the Norman Grade, moving to the Ukrainian National Guard, and finally the 49th Separate Assault Battalion. That journey brought him closer to the front, but the real fighting was still ahead. In this episode, we step into his first encounters with combat. Not the sweeping battles you see on the news, but the tense, unpredictable moments on the ground. From his first missions on a quick reaction force, to seeing the reality of war in a wounded and fallen soldiers, Watchman shares what it's like to be on the edge of the fight for the very first time.
Yes, we had 8 people.
All right, and with that, so you're sent out to the 0 line. What happens from there? This completely new position? What's going on?
They established a new position, and he's just like our commander is just telling us like, "Oh, there could be Russians there. I only went there one time before to scout, but we don't know if Russians moved in. Just be on high alert," and this sort of thing. And
Sorry, how big is your element going in here?
I guess we had 8 people, but we also had our commander. So our commander was bringing us there. So like a 9 initially, and then he left on his own. The day before that, he took one guy with us. It wasn't me. He took one of my friends, and they went there to scout. And then we left in the morning. So you always leave, like everything you do, you're always leaving at what we call stand 2, which is either like the 2 hours in between like the dusk and 2 hours of dawn. But that's the time where your human eye isn't going to work as good because it's getting dark, but also the night vision and the thermal isn't going to work as good because there's still a little bit of like sunlight out, so therefore those devices don't work as good. So we always do things at that time. And yeah, we ended up just getting to that position, and it's a brand new position, so we had to dig everything ourselves, and we had to split up 4 and 4. And we had these 2 Japanese guys who didn't speak any English. And so 2 of the Japanese guys went to one position, and then they were there with 2 Americans. And then the 4 of us, like 3 Americans and 1 Canadian, were on the other position. And these positions were like 700 meters from each other. And to get to the one position we were at, you have to walk through the other position. And it was just like in this big chunk of woods. And so we ended up being there. We were only supposed to be there for like 2 or 4 days or something. I forget the initial time, but we ended up staying there for like 10 days because our commander came back like at one time and said, "Oh, you can go back or you can just stay." And we just kind of decided amongst ourselves, like, well, let's just stay because we don't want to go back to that school that gets bombed all the time and that smells very bad when you pee. So let's just stay here. But then the problem was that we didn't have any water. Like, we ran out of water and we ran out of food. Well, we had some food, but the problem was the water. We ran out of water because we were digging all day, and it was the summer. It was like June, July. It was like June. So then we're digging all day, so we're drinking a lot of water all day, and we ran out of water. And then, so you can see this on my YouTube channel. You have the Like this is the video where like we find the Russian RPGs and stuff. But the whole point of like some people commented on that video and they were like, "Oh, these guys are idiots, just walking around randomly. Like how dangerous." But the reason we were walking around is we were trying to find water with our life straw. Because, like, yeah, it was dangerous to walk around and the drones could see us and we could get, we're out in the open. There was no tree covers over there. But we figured that we're either going to die of thirst or we'll die of, like, maybe die of a drone dropping something on us. So we just took the risk. And we also figured, like, if we're dehydrated and when our position gets attacked, we can't fight good and we're also going to die because we're dehydrated and we're not going to fight optimally. So we went to go get the water. A lot of people commented on that video like, these guys are stupid, but that was our rationale. And a lot of people, like, you guys weren't in that situation. So, I mean, I was glad I got water because I was pretty thirsty. And we ended up just getting water. It wasn't an ideal place to get water, but it was like a artillery shell crater that we got water from. And there was like a puddle there. And there was like tadpoles swimming in it. But we like filtered it through the life straw like 10 times and then boiled it.
That's pretty intense.
But yeah, because we weren't supposed to stay there for the 10 days. We were just supposed to stay there for 2 days. So we brought water for 2 days. And like carrying 10 days of water is like a lot of water to carry. Because we have to walk there to the position. So that was the problem. We had a lot of food actually, but the water was the issue. Water is heavy to carry, right? So one of the things that happened there on this position was like we didn't really see any Russians at that time. Nothing happened, but so the other guys I guess saw Russians at night, and I guess he saw like one Russian scout or two or something, one or two, trying to like crawl up to their position. It was just like a Russian scout, I guess. I never saw it, but we were just on our position, like 700 meters away from theirs, and they were shooting, like randomly, like shooting with the RPK, like the automatic bell-fed machine gun, just shooting with that all the time. And we didn't know what was going on there, and we were trying to radio to them, and nothing was getting through. And then one of the guys there, he came to us in the morning alone, like he walked us from his position alone, and he said, "Oh, be on the lookout. I saw a Russian last night." Or no, I think the first night he didn't shoot. It happened like 3 nights in a row. So the first night he didn't shoot at all. And he just said, "Oh, be on the lookout. I saw like a Russian in my thermal," but then when I looked again, he was gone. So, and this guy, we didn't know if he was telling the truth because before this, when we were in that school, he was always saying like, "I don't want to die. We have to do this right, and we have to do this right, and we have to do this right because I don't want to die." So he was like paranoid, and like he was like too scared. Like everybody's scared when you go to war, but there's a point to where you're too scared, right? So this guy was just too scared to be there. And so then when he came to us that first night and said he saw a Russian, like we don't know if he's telling the truth. And then the second night we hear these random shootings. And then we were like, what is going on? And we're trying to contact them over the radio, but they don't keep their radio batteries charged and they're not responding to us ever. And then we went over there to I guess we walked over there to see what happened. And they also had the food supply, like the Ukrainians would bring a supply to them of water and food. So we also had to go there to get that stuff. And then we went there and we asked them, like, what happened? Why were you shooting last night? And they said, oh, because we saw the Russians. And the thing was, is that only the one guy who was, like, too scared to be there had the thermal, because there's only one thermal. And then he was telling the other guy to shoot. So the one guy who was shooting the gun, we asked him what happened. And he would say, well, I don't know. I didn't see anybody. And the one guy who was, like, a little bit crazy in the head, like he's a nice guy and all, he's a cool guy, but he was like too scared to be there. And he was like, oh yeah, I saw him. But the other guy who was actually shooting the gun said, I don't know. So we don't know. And then we went back to our place, and then the next night it happens again, and we see the tracers like shooting, like we see the tracers of the PKM in the sky when they're shooting all over the place. because we were like kind of on a hill, and then it goes down. So then the way they're shooting, it's like going into the sky, and it was actually like they were actually shooting behind the lines. So they were shooting towards the Ukrainian lines, not towards the other way. So we don't know what's going on. It was like crazy. And then we go there in the morning. I remember like it was like dawn. It was like still dark out in the morning. And I remember I was sitting there and I was talking to the other three guys, and I was like, we need to go over there because they could be in trouble, and we don't know what's going on, and there could be like under attack by Russians. They were shooting for like 30 minutes, and we are like, what's going on? And then the one guy was like, no, we have to stay here and we have to stay at our position because we could get attacked too. Which he's kind of right, but and I was like, well, they're under attack now, and they might need our help, and they're our friends, so we have to go there. And then, so what ended up happening is the two people, which this is probably the right thing to do, right? The two people stayed, and two of us went. And then, but the problem was, is we were also afraid they were going to friendly fire us if we just popped out of the woods in the middle of the night. And then we're like, hey, and then they were shooting crazy, so we didn't know if they were going to shoot us. So we were like sneaking ourselves around the woods, not trying to get so close. And then we're like trying to, and we basically ended up waiting. We were like getting their perimeter, and then we were like, not trying to go in the way they're shooting, right? And then we like waited until the sun comes up because we don't want to just get straight up at night and get shot. So we waited till the sun goes up. It was only like 30 minutes away. And I was like using my thermal to scan through the woods, like, do I see any Russians coming through here? They're shooting at something, right? I'm going to scan everywhere. Like maybe they're shooting and the Russians are going to run away. And I don't know. But then we show up there, and like we call through the woods, and then one of the other Americans, he says, oh yeah, we're here. And then I say, yeah, don't shoot us. Like, okay. And then we go through there, and it's like, and we show up, and we're like, what happened? And they're like, oh, we saw a Russian. But the same thing as last night. It's like the one guy sees him, and then the other guy's shooting, and then we ask that guy, like, do you see something? And he's like, no. And the other guy's like, yeah, I saw him in the thermal. I guess he actually did see somebody, because our Ukrainian commander ended up telling us that he took the image, like he downloaded the image, and he saw someone on the thermal. But what ended up happening is other Ukrainians came there, like the QRF team or like the scout team or whatever. They ended up coming there like right after us. So we got there and like, what happened? And one guy's like, I don't know. And the other guy's like, oh, we saw someone. And then the Ukrainians come. And they weren't all Ukrainians, I guess, because there's one guy from like Azerbaijan and there's another guy who was French. But they were like the scout team. And then they were saying like, they were mad at them. And they were telling, no, you don't shoot. You only shoot if you ask on the radio, and then we give you confirmation to shoot. And they're like, you're shooting at nothing. Don't shoot. Like, you're not, there's nothing over there. Because as soon as they got there, they did a sweep through the woods. And this guy, like the guy who was like too scared, like not right in his head at the moment, like he's right in his head in normal situations, but at this moment he's not. And he's not right in the head. And then he's telling us like, there's a guy over there, like he's wounded and he's crawling through the woods and I can hear him. And we have to go get that guy because he's just crawling through the woods wounded. And then the Ukrainian team, they go over there and they sweep through the woods and they're like, no, there's nothing there. And this guy, this is how I knew, like, this is the final straw that I knew he wasn't right in the head. And he goes and he's like, no, there is a guy over there. And right after the Ukrainian team does sweeping through the woods, he takes his rifle in his hand and he rushes through the woods and he's like, ah! And like, he rushes over there. And I'm like, dude, this guy's not right in the head.
Well, I'm sorry. Was he actually
like, maybe,
screaming as he was running?
He was like, oh yeah, there's a guy over there. Let's go. Like, I don't know exactly what he said, but he said something like that. He did like a little scream, right? And yeah, and he runs through there, and we're just talking like, this guy's not right in the head, and like this guy like needs to go home. And that's what we were telling like the Ukrainians, like, bring him with you back to base. And that's basically ended up what happening. Like, he left, and I guess he left mostly because he left almost on his own accord because nobody believed him. Which, at this time in my life, I probably believe him. Like, I think he did see someone, but the way he was acting made it so suspect. And none of the Ukrainians believed him. Nobody believed him, right? The guy who was actually shooting at the Russians didn't even know if he was shooting at someone. So, because like the other guy, like I said, he was just guiding him with the thermal, and he was saying, "Shoot there." And so, yeah, he ended up leaving. He ended up just going home. Just, he just left the battalion and went home because nobody believed him. But he wasn't right in the head. He wasn't right to fight. He was too scared. So we ended up leaving that place after 10 days. We went back to the school. And then, like, we were, like, mad once we got back to the school because when we got back to the school, like, other people took our room we were sleeping in. So that was like, that's our place. And then, like, now you put new people in there. And they're like, where do we sleep? And then this girl, like this medic girl, she's my friend to this day. And she ended up going there. She's like, oh, you guys are foreigners. I can hear you speak English. And then she was talking to us a little bit. And then we were like mad and we were like kept complaining about our situation. And then she just said, oh, well, how about you just come to me at the house where there's other foreigners? And then we were like, yeah, let's go there. And so we ended up leaving the school bunker, and then we ended up setting ourselves up in these houses in the village. And we ended up staying there. And that's like where I would be for the rest of my time at the front, is in these village houses. I would end up like sleeping in the back of this. It was like these people who lived there before. They had like a homestead, so they had like a well water, and like the village in Ukraine is quite poor actually. So they don't even have running water. They had like a well water, I guess, and they would have like a fireplace stove inside the house and that sort of thing. But the other foreigners, like, it was already full from the other foreigners sitting in there. So we ended up sleeping, like, us new people who end up showing up, we ended up staying in the back. So we would stay like under this tree, and like there was like a hay barn. So we ended up staying in the hay barn because they had like a homestead set up. Like they had like chicken coops and like little barn doors for their goats and stuff like that. We ended up turning those into armories, and they had like an outhouse back there and like a bunch of hay, and they had like a bunch of wood. Like there's a shed with a bunch of wood in it for their wood stove. I ended up staying in the wood shed. That was my house. And so we ended up staying there. And then when we were there, like the other foreigners, there was like most of them were still assigning their contract. And so there was we never really went back to the position during this time, and we ended up trying to dig because our officer was saying, oh, we have to dig these like into these woods, and that'll be our new home because it's not safe just to stay in a house because it's not it's not underground. It's not safe. So you have to like just go, like, you don't have to go to position again because you guys were just on position for 10 days, and that's quite long. I mean, the guys now on position, they'll stay there forever. Like they'll stay, like people now on the front line will stay in position for 30 days at a time. But at this time, we don't have like Starlink. Like our Starlink is only on like further back. But now they have Starlink on the positions themselves on the zero lines. So, and the Starlink is important, not just so you can like video chat your friends back home or something, but so you can communicate with the different units. That's actually what they're using it for. So the Starlink is important. That's why we would just rotate all the time, and they also didn't like set up supply lines good. I don't know what the reason was, but anyways, it's different now from what I've been told. But they said, oh, you're on position for 10 days, so you don't have to go back, and just every day, just go to the woods and just build a bunker over there, and that'll be your new home once you're done, and just stay here until it's not done. And so we ended up digging into this mountainside, and like the ground in Ukraine is so hard. So we're like digging so hard every day. Like it's so hard to dig those things. Like you see those videos, like the first like few inches is soft, and then once you get past that, it's all clay, and it's like you have to use the pickaxe to dig those things. And we end up trying to dig into this side of the mountain, so it was like all clay the whole time. But eventually, we stayed for like another 1 or 2 weeks, just digging there every day. And then we were supposed to leave the front, to sign our contracts, to go, like, because the other foreigners, now they came back, and we met them again, and then we were supposed to go next, because they were just bringing people in batches to go sign their contract. So now it was our turn. And by the end of that, we were on the front for like a month without pay. But we were like basically we were getting ready to sign our contract, so we got in full kit because we're gonna bring our kit. Not gonna leave it there. But we got in full kit and we brought our bags and stuff, and like our bags to pack and everything to go to the city in the west off the front. And then what ended up happening right there is that one of the positions on the zero line was under attack, and it was like our fellow foreigners. And we didn't know what was happening. Like, this is the problem of being a foreigner in Ukraine, is you don't know the language, and anything that happens, you never know what's going on. So all the Ukrainians were getting up and like rushing into the cars and like getting in truckloads of people, because it's like the Taliban at that time. There's no APCs, there's no Bradleys, there's no there's no BMPs or anything. So we just use these Taliban trucks, high Toyota Hiluxes, to bring ourselves to the front. But you don't go all the way to the front. You just go halfway, and then you get out of the truck, and then you walk the rest of the way. But so we're just sitting there, like we think like, oh, our ride to one of the trucks is going to come to bring us off the front so we can go sign our contracts. And then the Ukrainians, we don't know what they're saying, we don't know what's going on, and they just start rushing on alert to get in all the trucks and to like rush to the front because one of the positions was under attack. And we don't know what's going on. And then like 1-2 truckloads later, if something of Ukrainians going, then we kind of figured out like, oh, something's going on. Like the QRF time, right? We have to react. And so we get in the next truck, and basically there was a mine. Like so normally you'll get out of the truck, like I said, and you'll walk
Just
the rest of the way. But because
I have a question. Is this the situation where your platoon sergeant left? He didn't get in the vehicle?
platoon sergeant left,
The Canadian?
I don't think so.
He didn't get in the vehicle and you made a joke?
Oh yeah, that happens after.
Oh, okay. I want you to tell that story, but go on.
There's a similar situation. Yeah, that happens at the end of this part of the story, but so we're getting in the truck and then we're loading up. So because it's a quick reaction event, we're not going to walk the other part of the half of the way. We're going to drive the whole way. But the problem is that they set up anti-tank mines along the road because we normally don't drive. We normally walk through there. And there's an anti-tank mine. We're not in a tank. We're in a truck, but it's a Toyota Hilux truck, right? So it's a big truck, like kind of like a F-150 or something, right? And we're loaded up. So not only is there like 15 guys in the back of the truck, they're pretty heavy, right? 15 people. But there's also like our plate carriers and our rifles and RPGs and ammo and everything, right? And water. So you think like maybe the truck's heavy and we're going to explode. And so they like, we're going super fast because like our mission, like our guys are under attack and we have to get there fast to save their life. But like, then there's a mine on the road, and this was a friendly mine. Like the Ukrainians planted this mine in case the Russians attack. But this is a friendly mine, so we knew where it was. And then we're rushing, and then all of a sudden, like we're slamming on the brakes, and then they're like, "Oh no, there's a mine here." And then they're going slowly over the mine, and then they're like, and one of the Ukrainian gets out of the car, and he's like, "No, go this way. No, like a little bit to the left. The mine's over there." And then I'm just like, "Bro, we're gonna die. Like I'm gonna die, and I didn't even get to see a Russian in my whole life, and it's gonna be to a friendly Ukrainian mine that's gonna blow us up. Like, and we're all just gonna die." And I'm like, I'm just sitting there, and I'm thinking like, well, why don't we just get out of the car? Like, just get out of the car, let the truck roll over it with less weight, and then just go and get back in. Yeah, it would have maybe took a little bit more time, but it's safer, and we won't die. And then, but like, I can't move because like I'm sitting there in the truck, and there's like 15 other people in the truck, and you're like almost on top of each other, right? So you really can't move. You can't like you're not free to make your own choice. You're just like stuck with whatever the group's doing. And so that was that, and we just go slowly, and then we end up surviving, and it didn't blow up because I wouldn't be here to talk. And then with the other guy, like the Ukrainian guy who got out to guide the truck to go the right way, to not go directly over it, then he gets back in, and then we go. And then we're just driving through the, farm fields or whatever. And then we get out at this place, and then we start walking to the rest of the way. And like I have this short video of this where I'm carrying the RPG, and I just remember like the RPG was so heavy. If you look on my YouTube channel, there's a short, and I'm carrying the RPG. The video, the guy's taking the video from behind me, and we're walking up this hill, and then we walk up this hill, and then we go down this hill into like this little. It's almost like a riverbed, but it wasn't a riverbed. But they have those things in Ukraine. It's like a draw. I guess that's what it'd be called. It's like a draw. And so then it goes down, and then it goes back up, and then we go through there, go back, and then go back up, and then once we get to the top of that place, there's other foreigners there, like those foreigners who got on the first truckload, and there's like our commander, and they're carrying one of the wounded foreigners that are there. So I guess what happened is that the foreigners were on position, and I don't know, there's like 5 or 6 of them there maybe, and they got attacked. 2 of them died. 1 Polish guy died, and 1 Colombian guy died in the firefight, and then one Australian guy got wounded, and then another Hungarian guy got wounded also. So 4 casualties in total. And when I showed up, they're evacuating the Australian guy, and the other foreigners are evacuating him on the stretcher. And I remember like there's this guy from New Zealand, and just to pause the story, this guy from New Zealand was like my hero at the front, because this guy was in the New Zealand Army for 8 years, and then he was in the Burma. He fought in Burma in the Civil War there, but this was like, for those who don't know, this war's been going on for 70 years, right? Most people just think it started in like 2021 with the military coup, but no, it's been going on for 70 years actually. And he was there in the early 2000s. He's an older guy, but he was there in the early 2000s. He was there for like a year fighting. And then he did like personal security protection in South Africa and Johannesburg, the murder capital of the world. And then he also did landmine clearing in Angola near the South African border, because they did wars there. So this guy had tons of experience, like just mostly from the New Zealand Army, because that's where you get most of your training in official militaries like that. But he was there for 8 years. So, this guy, like, he knew a lot. And he wasn't like the type he was like, oh, I'm going to...
I think it's the Namibian border, but go on.
South Africa Namibia borders.
Go on. Yeah.
Namibia borders, South Africa, you're right. But I think he said something about Angola. I forget. But anyways.
Probably Angola. There was a war there. Go on.
Yeah. But this guy kept us alive, right? Because a lot of times in Ukraine, you'll see a foreigner, and they'll say, like, I was an SAS sniper, blah, blah, blah. I was a Navy SEAL. Those guys are all full of shit, and they're always lying. This guy, like, he didn't brag about anything he did. He just did it, and eventually it would come out that he did that, and then you would ask him questions about it, and it was legit, but he wasn't bragging about it, and he didn't want to be a leader. He never said, oh, I never want to be in a leadership position, whereas those guys who lie, they always want to be the leader, right? But we always looked up to him, and he ended up being my friend, and like we like he just had a lot of wisdom, right? Like he knew how to soldier, So anyways, they're carrying the stretcher of the wounded Australian guy. He's wounded in like the left leg. Like I saw the leg, and it was like, I saw him bleeding. And he's on the stretcher, and then the New Zealand guy is carrying him, and he's just saying, oh, you're going to be all right, bro. You're going to be all right. And then one of the other British guys who's carrying it, he's like, he's telling us, because we just showed up, we don't know what's going on. And one of the other British guys is saying, hey, there's a Russian guy over there. Stay on alert. Hey, look, there's a Russian guy. And so then we're just like, oh, okay. So we just take our like positions, and we take aiming positions, and then like we don't know what to do. Like it's not like the U.S. Army where there's always a sergeant over you, and there's always going to tell you what to do, and there's always a structure or organization. Like that's, I mean, not always, but that's kind of how a war will work in the U.S. Army. But like in the Ukrainian Army, there's not a direct. You don't never have a direct NCO almost ever, and like because you're all just a bunch of random foreigners who showed up randomly. So you're all almost equal, and someone might take a leadership position, but it's not like that structure. So anyways, we don't know what to do. And so I'm just like, I just use my knowledge of my training, and I'm just like, okay, let's get down on a knee and let's get into prone, and then let's take up our positions. And then I say, oh well, they're moving back with the stretcher. So I tell there's two other guys with me. There's one Japanese and another American with me. And then I tell them, okay, well let's just bound back towards the with the carrying of the stretcher. So I gotta say, okay, like you bound first and you run back and we'll cover you. And then, because we're trying to cover the stretcher for their retreat. And that's our goal. But so then I'm like, okay, like you bound back and I'll cover you. And then we'll bound back after, right? And we're just going to do a bound. But eventually we keep doing bounds back and back. And then we don't know where they went because we're bounding and they're running. So then we lost them. So then we're like, we don't know what's going on. And so then we're like, oh, okay, well, let's just walk back there towards the direction they went. And then we're walking back there, and then this single only Ukrainian guy, I guess he got lost from his guys too. That's how chaotic a war is. And then this one single Ukrainian guy is saying, oh, who's over there? Like, where'd you come from? And then we're like, we don't know who's left over there. Well, I guess they all left. Because they're carrying this guy on the stretcher, and then they went back. And then so we were just gonna like try to follow them, and then the Ukrainian guy said, no, let's just wait here. So then we wait there, and we're just sitting like under this tree hiding from the drones for like hours. And then eventually like the Ukrainian guy is speaking on the radio, and all these hours he's trying to get a hold of the radio, but nobody comes back to him. And then we're gonna go, well, and then I saw a truck that's going like towards where we just came from, but it's like I said, it's back towards that draw. So we went back up that draw, down it, and then up it again. And then we're on this hill overlooking that place where they were carrying him on the stretcher. And then we see this truck, and I have an RPG, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, am I going to shoot this truck? It ended up being my company commander, but I have no idea. But I didn't shoot. But
did you fire your rifle here, or did you just do was it like a bounding Overwatch, or were you actively like suppressing the Russian when you were bounding?
yeah, it was like a bounding Overwatch. We weren't shooting. I didn't see anybody, and nobody was shooting at us. It was just like the potential that they could be there.
So just to be sure, at this point, you haven't fired your rifle yet.
No.
Okay.
And then, yeah. So then this guy, he says, like, he's on the radio, and then eventually, like after hours of trying, he gets confirmation that the guys are over there. So then we go back over there.
You're okay. Keep going.
So we go back over there to where we saw like the guys on the stretcher retreating, and apparently there was other people that were just like near there in the wood line. Because where I saw the guy in the stretcher, they were carrying him outside the wood line along this like dirt road, this grass road, like a grass road with tracks in it. And I guess other like some Ukrainians and other foreigners were over there. Well, we had no idea. So we just like followed the retreat back where they're medevacing or Kazavacing. But so then with the Ukrainian guy, we ended up going back there, and then we went going to the tree line, and then we figured it out like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of people there. But apparently before that, like while we were waiting with that Ukrainian guy or something, they had a drone drop on them. So like a Maverick drone or something came over, and it had an RPG attached to it, and they dropped it on them. And then like one of my friends from Argentina, he had like the piece of shrapnel just hit him here. So he just had a scar, like a cut here. Like kind of like a badass, right? Like, oh, he has a scar on his face. But he didn't really, it wasn't like anything. He just had a scratch. And then our company commander, he got hit in the shoulder. And then he ended up going to the hospital later, but he ended up like fighting that whole day, like not fighting necessarily as people think of it, but he ended up staying that whole day. And later on, one of my American friends, he found shrapnel like in his shoulder pocket, in the Velcro shoulder pocket. He found a little piece of shrapnel there, I guess from that drone. But I wasn't directly there for it. I was just like someone nearby. But they had that drone drop on them. And then And then we were there, and then they, like, basically what happened was these other guys who were on the first position, like the original people and the other QRF team, they all left. And then just like the four of us, I guess, just the four of us stayed. So one British guy who was there, he was the, like, let's say the NCO of the position when the four guys got a casualty. And then his original guys left, and then we went there. Okay, but sorry. So one part of the story is, okay, so right before this, like I said, we were waiting for our bags to go to the front. We actually did spend a day on position there. So we spent 6 days on one of the other positions on the zero line right before this. So we got off the position from the 6 days, and then we thought we were going to the west to sign our contract, but then we went to this QRF, right? So I forgot about that. So then we end up going to the QRF team, and then when we're there, all the guys leave, right? Like I was saying. And everyone leaves, and now it's just the four of us left. And, like, not only are we gonna, like, so where we were, we're actually gonna move forward. So everyone's leaving, and then the four of us are gonna move a little bit forward up the tree line. It's like a vertical tree line that goes north to where the Russian position is. So we're gonna move forward to establish this position over there. And the problem was the Russians, during that attack, they took over our old position. So where we're gonna set up now is there's no trenches. We're just going to set up there in the trees. And, like, you know, if you get bombed, good luck. There's no trench. So we had to stay there all night. And this was probably one of the most miserable nights of my life because we went there as a QRF team. So when you go as QRF, you only bring, like, water and ammo. You don't bring stuff to sleep. You don't bring, like, wet weather gear. You're not bringing, you know, a bag of things. You're not bringing something to sleep in. You're not bringing something warm or wet weather gear. You're just bringing weapons and ammo because you think I'm going to go fight and shoot my gun or something. So we just go there and we stay there the night for the four of us. And the British guy then, you know, the guy who's leading us at that time, he says, "Oh, so we're not going to sleep because, like, right before we just got attacked, and now the Russians are just there like 100, 200 meters from here. So we're just not going to sleep all night. We're just 100% security all night." And I was like, okay, whatever. But it was so miserable because it rained that night. It would, like, rain on and off that night. So I'm just laying there in the dirt. There's, like, bombs falling near us. Like, and I don't have a trench. So you're, like, a little bit scared because you don't even have a trench. I, like, dug, like, myself a little bit, like, with my hands. I, like, dug a little thing. But it was nothing. And I'm just laying there in the dirt, and I'm just getting rained on, laying down, pulling security. And then it gets cold, right? And then you're wet and cold, and you're tired. And we just got off position for 6 days. So then those 6 days, you also don't get a lot of sleep. That was pretty miserable. Like, one of the most miserable nights of my life. Anytime it rains, it's going to be very miserable. If it doesn't rain, it's probably fine. But rain just makes everything worse. And then so the morning comes, and then we're waiting there, and some other foreigners and a couple Ukrainians come, and then the Ukrainians are trying to tell us, you stay here for 2 more days. And then we're arguing with them. And one of my other friends is arguing with them, no, we're not going to stay here. And the Ukrainians, they came there just to, like, dig, just to help the other foreigners dig, and just to bring some supplies. And they had no intention of sleeping there. And they're going to tell us, no, you're going to stay here another 2 nights with these other foreigners, and that's your position, and you'll get off the position in 2 days. And then we said, no way, we're not going to do that. We just got off the other position, and we were there for 6 days, and we weren't even supposed to be here. We just came here for QRF, and then everybody left us. And besides that, we're not even on contract, and it's our turn to go sign the contract, and like, one of the admin officers is waiting for us to bring us to sign our contract. And it's our turn to sign. So we're not going to stay here. And then we kept arguing with them about that. And then eventually they said, oh, yeah, okay. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll do it. Because they had no intention of staying there. They just wanted the foreigners to do it. And so then they said, oh, okay, wait here. So they had to walk all the way back and get on the vehicle or whatever. They had to walk all the way back to where the houses are in the village to get their sleeping stuff. So then they could come back and stay in the position for 2 days. They didn't have any intention of staying there. And then we had to argue with them to stay there. So then we had to wait there again. And then, and then they came back, and then we come and get on, like we walk out of the position, and then we get on the truck. And then what happened was that this is when what your question was. I saw this guy who was my old, like, when we were in that National Guard unit leading by that Latvian guy, there was also this Canadian guy. And that Latvian guy made the Canadian guy like our drill sergeant or our platoon sergeant to do our trainings and stuff. And all that guy liked to do was yell and yell and yell. But he was full of shit, and you knew that everything he said didn't make tactical sense. And I would always be the guy to challenge him. So I had some sort of leadership position in that platoon, but that guy was above me. But anyways, when we got back to our vehicle swap, like we walked to this place to get on the vehicle, and when we got back to the vehicle, there was this guy, and he was crying. And he was like, oh, like during the firefight, one of the stray bullets came close to my face. And then I was just thinking of my children back home in Canada. And what if I leave them and die? And like, he was just like crying. And then we heard a firefight going on. And like right where we came from.
As he's crying?
Yeah, he was crying.
As he's crying, the firefight goes off.
Yeah, and then as he's crying, the firefight goes off. So we get in the truck to go back to the village, right? We get in the truck and we're like, okay, that's done. Like, we're in the truck now, and we're gonna go back to the village. And then as we're in the truck's about to leave, and then the firefight goes off, and we hear the firefight, and we listen to it, and it's like that's coming exactly from where we just came from, like exactly where we just came from, where the other foreigners switched out with us. The sound of the firefight is coming exactly from there, and we're like, oh crap! Like we have to go, cure up to them. We have to go help them. And then it was like the Ukrainian driver, the Ukrainian who's going to drive us. He's like on the radio, and he's like, "Oh, I guess that was our platoon sergeant, yeah." And he's on the radio, and he's going to say like, "Oh, let's see what's going on first." And then he says, and then after like 5 or 10 minutes or something, he said, "Okay, let's go." And then so we get on the truck, and then I just remember we asked the guy who's crying, and they're like, "Hey, Sam, you coming?" I was like, "Oh no." And then the other guy said, "Oh no, he's not gonna come. Forget him." And then we just like laughed about it, but then we went there, and then all that ended up happening there is we went there and we had to drive halfway and then walk, and then all that ended up happening there was like one of the other foreigners, he said, "I need shovels to dig my position," and the shovels are over there where the Russians are. So this guy, he's like crazy in a good way, I guess, and he runs over to where the Russians are. He takes the shovel, and he runs back with the shovel, and the Russians are shooting at him because the Russians just see some random guy who takes the shovel. It was like our shovel, but the Russians took our position, right? So then he goes to the Russian position and takes the shovel, and then he runs back. So then the Russians are shooting the PKM at him as he's running away with the shovel, and that's what we heard. And he didn't shoot back at him at all, I guess. That's what he told us. And then so when we got there, everything was already done. So yeah, then we had to wait there more longer for a vehicle to come or something, and then we waited, and when we went back to the village, that was that story. And we ended up going to sign our contracts in the city in the west. And that was kind of fun. Like we were on the front for a month at that time. I didn't say like everything that happened, but every day you're basically getting shelled. Even when you're in the village in your house, like bombs are falling right near you, or you're getting it's like white phosphorus, but it's not. You're getting magnesium, and it's raining down on you, and it's causing fires around you. Like every day it's something. So we could go off the front, and that was nice. And we were just like kind of chilling in the hotel, and like. Just hanging out, going to restaurants and stuff as we waited for our paperwork to be done. We set up our Ukrainian bank accounts to get paid, and we just had to do paperwork and wait for them to do the paperwork. So it was just a lot of waiting, really. Like, we just did some paperwork every day in the morning, and then it was mostly just waiting for them to finish it. And then we end up going back to the front, and we end up driving there because that Latvian guy that I said before, he has those vehicles who come in. So we got new vehicles or something. So we ended up driving one of them to the front. So first, like from the front to there, like yeah, we get in the truck to go, but the truck just brings us to the train station, and then we took the train across the whole country. And that's how I travel most of the time in Ukraine. But this time we have the vehicle, the donation vehicle. So now we're going to drive that. So we drove that all the way back to the front. Um, and that was kind of interesting. We have to stop in Kyiv for a night, that sort of thing. Just kind of like explore a little bit, but we just drove cross country trip to the front. And Ukraine's about like a 16-hour drive across the country. I remember this one time, like we were like very close to the front, and like we're very close to the front. Like we're basically like almost. I think we're past one of the checkpoints. So in Ukraine, they have all these checkpoints set up along the highways and stuff. And when you get closer to the front, you get to more checkpoints. So I remember like it was nighttime, and we were like kind of close to one of our bases that's sort of near the front, and we had to like go past the checkpoint to get to that place. And then we end up stopping at this hotel because it was so late in the night, and we're just gonna stay there, just like a little, almost like a hostel. It was just like a room with like 6 beds in it, and we just took one of them for ourselves. There was 4 of us at the time, and so we end up. But I remember like this is like a lesson for anyone who wants to travel internationally or go to Ukraine. Like there was the hotel staff there, and she was saying like, I need your passport, like give me your passport. And I said, I'm not giving you my passport. And one of my other friends was saying, no, just give him your passport, like whatever. And he was like just tired and he just wants to go to sleep. And I'm like, no, he's not going to take my passport. And then I say like, I'm not giving my passport, we'll find a different hotel. And then I just tell her like, oh, you want our passport? Just take a picture of our passport, but we're not going to give it to you forever. Like, we're not just going to let you hold it because your passport is your only way out of the country. Like, so you never want to give anybody your passport when you're traveling internationally. Like, if you're living in a different country and you have to do something with immigration, it might be okay to give them your passport or something. But that's immigration, right? That's the government. Like, but it's just some random people. Never let them hold your passport. Always keep your passport forever. And especially like coming from a West, you have a Western passport, people want to sell that, right? You can just take a picture. So you can take your picture and then you can put it on. Like you can, pick the other picture out and then you can put it on. People sell that for like thousands of dollars. So people want to steal your passport in different countries. So that's just a lesson for people. I mean, never give your passport to anybody, especially in a war-torn country. Because like in countries like that, like with a war going on, they shut down the embassies. So then you don't have a passport. You really can't leave the country. Yeah. So you always like your passport's the most important thing. Like when I was on the front line and stuff, I kept my passport in between my plates, like underneath my plate, in between my trauma pad. That's where I kept my passport. And like I don't want any holes to get in it with shrapnel. I don't want anything to happen to it. You can have to stay safe behind my plate. I'll die before my passport dies. Next after that, we just so we end up getting back to the front. It was a pretty like normal.
Sorry, let's.
It was pretty like normal before that.
Let's go ahead and stop there for this part. Those early missions were a sobering introduction to the war. Not defined by the rounds fired, but the things he saw and the people he served alongside. In our next episode, the pace of war changes. We'll follow Watchman into the Kharkiv counteroffensive, his first sustained combat, the dangers of a fast-moving front, and the experience that would leave a lasting mark. It's a turning point in the story you won't want to miss. See you in the next episode. Slava Ukraini. All right, so you're getting back to the front line after signing your contract. Go ahead and continue from there.
Yeah, once we get back, at this time it's probably about July or August 2022. But once we get back, now we're on official contract and we can get paid. I guess in July, but pretty much it's kind of like nothing really major happened like right away. But like as soon as I got back, I could tell like it was kind of different. Like we were getting shelled more. and like the artillery, it was more accurate. It was getting closer to us every time. And then also, by that time we were gone, probably took about 2 weeks for our paperwork for the contract. So we were gone for 2 weeks, and then during that time, the other foreigners and Ukrainians, they pushed the line forward. So they established a new position forward, and they established a new position forward, and so we were closer to them now. And before, there was like a lot of dead man's areas, I guess, and people were like scared to go with each other, except for that firefight I mentioned. I don't really understand fully, but now we pushed forward because, and I guess they told. So I wasn't there; 'cause I was signing the contract, but the other foreigners told me that when they went to that position, they went in like expecting it to be like a full-on assault, and they prepared for that. But then the Russians just left. Like they saw the Russians get in a vehicle and run away. They didn't want to fight. So then our friends, like my friends, they just occupied that without a fight. They didn't shoot anything. And so then when I got back, we were just occupying that position like the whole time. So I would just do 2 days there, 2 days off, 2 days there, 2 days off. That was really like nothing really significant happened. We were just doing our normal like rotational like star job kind of thing, like our 9 to 5, you could say. We're just doing 2 days there, 2 days off, 2 days there, 2 days off, and we're just there. Yeah, nothing really major happened during that time. Besides, you just get shelled and get artillery strikes. Sometimes with a helicopter, you hear it. I don't know, just dodging explosions. But then, what's known as history is the Kharkiv counteroffensive starts. Which, there's some time that happened in between this and when I got back, like 2 months maybe, but nothing really significant happened in those 2 months. Like I said, we're just going to position every time, and nothing memorable that I remember for a good story, but maybe like a month or two passes, just trying to stay alive from the shelling. But the month or two passes, and then what's known as like our Kharkiv counteroffensive starts. And so they're telling us like we're gonna do this assault, we're gonna establish this position, and the whole time we're going to like our other position, and we're on the zero line. They're saying like, oh, over there, that tree line, we're gonna take that soon. Oh, we're gonna take that soon. And then a week goes by, another week goes by, and they just keep saying, oh, we're gonna take that soon. We're gonna assault that soon. So now the day finally comes, and we're gonna assault that. And so we get ready, and and we get ready for it, and but it's like there's no plans, right? It's not like the U.S. Army where you get a full operation order. It's just kind of like, oh, we're going there, and bring some ammo with you. And the other guys, like the other company, they're gonna go there, and like the 93rd Brigade. So we were like working with the 93rd Brigade. They were like around us. They like all of our artillery and all of our tanks, we've like relied on them for our artillery for the most part. We had our own mortars, and we had one tank we captured from the Russians for our battalion, but everything else, all the artillery that would shoot on our front line, was all from the 93rd Brigade. So basically the idea was, like the second company, we were third company, right? So the second company, that's how Ukrainian numbers it. They number it for first, second, third. I know the U.S. Army does Alpha Company, Bravo Company, but so anyways, our second company, they're going to take the tree line to your right, and the 93rd, they're going to take the tree lines to your left, and we're all going to push up. And then someone said like something like, oh yeah, by the way, like I heard another foreigner talking about like, oh yeah, by the way, like this is a whole movement. Like at first we just thought, oh, we're just going to take this tree line in our sector, right? Like our individual battalion is going to do an assault because we want to. And no, apparently the whole line was moving up. Like for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, the whole Ukrainian lines were moving up as a big assault. So we were part of that. So we do that, and initially, what happened was I was supposed to be on the assault team to do this, and then they took me off it because I got in like a little bit of trouble, and they took me off it. And then one of the other guys.
Sorry, for what? What did you get in trouble for?
Smoking weed.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, a lot of guys there were doing it, But this girl ratted me out. Like one of the foreigner girls ratted me out, told the Ukrainian officer, and then they were gonna like deal with it or something. They said, but nothing ever came of it. Nobody really cared. But a
Was
lot of
it
people were smoking there. Like me and my other friends were smoking. Some of the Ukrainians were smoking. Some of the Ukrainians they would grow it there. Like they grew weed plants on the front, and
um
sometimes they would give it to us.
was it you don't have to answer this if you
I
don't
don't
want.
say her name.
Okay.
Don't say her name on the video.
It's not Snake though, right?
No, Snake died.
Okay. Keep going.
But anyways, but so then they took me off the team because like a lot of people were smoking, but I was the only one who got caught. So then they took me off the team. But then there was this other guy from Switzerland, and then he didn't want to do it. He like backed out of the assault. So then he ended up going on the medic team for the assault. So he ended up being part of the assault, but just on the medic team, but not like assaulting, I guess. So he was a part of the event for like a Kozak point. So then he did that and he backed out of it. So then I took his spot again. So then I was going to be on it originally, and then I got kicked off. And then the other guy didn't want to do it, so then they put me back on. There was other guys who like weren't doing it, so I don't know why they just didn't pick one of them. Maybe because I have military experience, but I don't know. So then they put me back on it. So then what happened was we split up into two teams of our foreigners. So I think there had to be like 15 to 20 of us foreigners that were doing this. They're like maybe 16, maybe 8 and 8, something like that.
And I
And
have one
we
more.
split up into.
I have a question just from the tactics point. You have 20 guys or 15 guys. Are y'all in 2 elements? Are y'all in like 4 elements? Like, are y'all like 4 fire teams? Are you like 2 squads? Like, how do y'all conduct this assault?
So we split up into 2 teams, like 2
Okay.
squads. So it was like 8 and 8, I think. I forget the numbers. I think it was 8 and 8. So it's like a squad size force. And so the first team, they actually went first ahead of me. And they did the assault with Ukrainians. Like, so they did an assault. They went first, and I guess they came across a group of Russians, and they took them prisoner. And like the Russians were just like sleeping on position. So then when they got assaulted and like our forces came upon them, they just surrendered. And then and I guess they got in one firefight. They got in one firefight after that, I guess, after they took those guys prisoner. And during that firefight, we don't really know what happened, and I wasn't there, but they said that one of the Ukrainians threw a grenade and that it hit this American guy, one of my friends, and he got wounded in the butt. Like the shrapnel went into his butt. We don't like. One of my friends swears that he saw the Ukrainian throw it. I don't know for sure how that guy got wounded. I wasn't there. There's a lot of friendly fire that happens, but like you never know really who you're shooting at. But so then we came behind them, and so we were going up these tree lines, like that old position that I told you guys that we stayed at many times. We went up through there, this tree line, and then we went like past there. We went further down. We crossed like this open field to the next tree line, and then we went from there, and then we had to cross another open field to the next tree line. See, when they told us we're doing this assault, they just said, "You see that tree line over there that you're looking at from your position? Well, you're going to go there." And then we went past there, and we're like, "Where are we going?" So we went across the open field to the place we were saying we were going to go, and then we went further than that, and then we crossed another open field. I think we crossed 3 open fields to get there or something. So we crossed 3 open fields, and then by like the second, after we crossed 2 open fields, our platoon sergeant said, "Okay, now that we're getting closer, it's more dangerous. Now we're just going to go in 2s, right? Instead of all 8 of us at once, spaced out or whatever, we're going to go at two at a time." And I remember like Like at this time, like basically we saw the tree line we were heading to across the open field, and it was just getting lit up with explosions, like the worst explosions I've ever seen. And it was because the tank was shooting at it, right? So tanks can shoot very accurately and in a rapid succession. So the tree line is getting blown up, and you can see like the orange explosions coming from the tree line. And it's like boom, boom. And like the trees are going everywhere. Like the branches are getting flown over all the place. And you can see it across the open field, maybe like 400 meters, 500 meters across this field. And before this moment, like I think basically you're always trying to dodge explosions, and you're saying, well, if there's an explosion over there, I'm not going to go there, right? Common sense. Well, this is the moment where I was kind of like, there's explosions over there, and we're going to head straight for them.
Just
And
to be
it's
sure,
like,
this is a
okay,
friendly tank firing, right?
no, this was an enemy thing.
Oh, what the fuck? Okay, I was about to say you're getting like the best base of fire, but never mind. I don't know. Okay, go on.
No, this was an enemy tank because we had friendlies in that tree line already. We were coming up
Okay.
behind them.
I'm sorry. I was.
Because remember, I said that the other foreigner group went before us.
Yeah, I thought you were saying you were heading to a different tree line, but yeah, keep going. My apologies.
No, the other foreigner group went ahead of us, so we were going to link up with them. So had to cross these tree lines, and so once we got to the last tree line, like it was getting blowing up forever, with the tank just firing at it, boom, 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 and then our Ukrainian platoon sergeant says, "Oh, we're going there," and we just look, and we're like, "Over there, like where we're gonna die."
Fuck that.
And like I remember, like our group, we just looked at each other and we're like, "Well, this is what we're doing. Like this is what we signed up for. Let's go." And at that moment, that was like kind of where the fear left my body, because like when I started to walk forward, I just understood like I was scared to walk forward, but then once I made the decision to walk forward, I was like, "All right, this is what we're doing. Like game on." And so like that was like one of the scariest moments, I guess, but that was just because like that was the initial like, okay, we're doing this. And then once we got there, like we're just like getting blown up, explosions all around us. Once we get to that tree line, like as to be expected, and then we get into this bunker, and like when we're there in this bunker, it was like a bunker the Russians made, right? So we took over, like our forces took over the Russian position. And then when we get there, like I think I was the first two or first four. And then when we get there, there was like this Polish guy that was there. Like, so Polish people can basically speak Ukrainian, so he's usually not with the foreigners, he's like with the Ukrainian guys. But he was Polish, I guess. Maybe Polish Ukrainian or something, I don't know. But there was this Polish guy there. And he's just there alone in this Russian bunker getting bombed by himself. And we just come into his bunker and he's just there like super scared, right? I mean, most people would be scared when you're alone, right? Especially if you're alone. You don't have like your friends to like, oh, we're all doing this together, like laughing about something. Like, so he's just there alone getting bombed by himself. And then we come into his bunker and you can just see the fear on his face. And we're just like, oh, having fun. Like, that's kind of our reaction to him. Like, oh yeah, we're here too now. And then, so we're just like talking to him a little bit, and then we just stay there for a little bit. And then our Ukrainian platoon sergeant, he says, okay, we're going to move again. And we're like, because usually like before this, the whole time, we're just manning the position, right? We're not assaulting anything. And so before this, we were just like, okay, so normally when you get bombed, you go in and you duck into cover and you stay in the trench until the bombing stops. So this time, we're just going to get into the bunker for like 5 minutes, and then the bombing doesn't stop, but we're just going to get out anyways in the bombing. So then he does the same thing, and he says, okay, we're going to go 2 at a time, and we're going to move to the next bunker. Like, we're under heavy tank fire at this time. Like, you can see, like, we're in a bunker, and you can still see the explosions of the light, like the orange light of the explosions seeping through the holes of the bunker. And you can tell, like, the trees are just getting blown up, branches are going everywhere. And so we go 2 and 2, and we go to the next bunker. And I remember, like, I think our Ukrainian platoon sergeant, he goes in front of us, and then I was, like, the next group, or I was, like, the last group at this time or something. And then I'm just looking around, like, where do we go? Like he just said go that way. And I'm just like, I want to get in cover. I'm going to die. And then he's like, oh, Watchman over here. And there's, like, this little hole in the ground, another bunker. And I'm like, okay. I just uploaded a short on my YouTube channel of me in this bunker. It's like a very dark video, and I'm in this bunker. I'm right next to the door. So then we stay there for like another 5 minutes or something, and then we get out, and then we go. Like I don't think we went 2-and-2s in this time. At this time or maybe we did go in 2-and-2s, but like in closer succession to each other. And then we go, and then this is the time where we actually get to the 0 line where our other foreigners are, and we link up with the other foreigner team, the other foreigner squad. And then the minute I get there, the New Zealand guy is there, and remember the New Zealand guy, he never wants any leadership position, but he has all this experience, right? And then at this time, the New Zealand guy is barking orders at everybody like, "Yo, you get down over there, take security over there, you go down over there, look at that way." And then like, "Oh, okay, let's do it." Like, game on. And then we're just kind of sitting there, like chilling, like the tank is still firing at us. I'm just laying in the dirt, pulling security, waiting for a Russian to pop out somewhere. So at this time, like we linked up with the most forward element, right? So now there's nobody in front of us except Russians. And like the assault is still on, right? This is the same day of the assault. Like this is the same Monday. And then like we're just kind of laying there, like, you know, the tank is still firing at us. Eventually we lay there for so long, like, and then we move up a little bit. And then we move up, and then we move up, and then we start digging like some like food trenches and stuff. Like the tank, it gets tired, it runs out of ammo, or they want to eat food or human things, whatever happens. So the tank stops firing at us, and we start and it's nighttime now, and we just start digging our trenches like as much as we can dig in one night. And so I didn't get very deep. I remember my Ukrainian platoon sergeant, he was, and like the platoon, our company commander, they were in the same trench, and they were like, they're monsters. They like dug a whole thing, and me, I could only dig me and my friend, we could only dig half, and we were so tired, and so we didn't sleep the whole night. Like we basically just like 70% security. I don't know, very little sleeping. And then so the morning comes, and then when the morning comes, we what happens next? So the morning comes, and we keep like, so the Russians, they like to sleep too, right? So you don't get shelled as much at night. I guess that's how it works. And so then the morning comes and the shelling starts, and you get woken up by the Russian alarm clock, and then basically after this, like, we move up, we keep going forward, moving up to the tree line. There's nobody in front of us, there's no friendly units in front of us, so we keep moving up in the tree line. And then we come to this BMP. So there's this old like Russian BMP that's there that like the Russians abandoned because they were like retreating because we were assaulting or something. And then we kind of just end up hanging out around there
I have a question
for a little bit.
Is this BMP the BMP2 that's shown on that TikTok video of the TikToker in your unit?
Where he's getting shot at?
Yeah, that guy. But there's a video where he's like just posing around a random BMP2 in like some fucking field with some other, you know, soldiers. Maybe you don't know what I'm talking about.
No, that one's farther. No, maybe that video. No, that video is like farther. That BMP is farther back.
Okay.
That video would have been closer to our original position, where, like that one guy was shooting at the guy with the thermal.
The thermal, yeah. Okay.
Like the first position I ever went to. That I guess that BMP would be closer to there. But we're like maybe 5 kilometers from there at this point. I don't know. Like we're further away now because the lines moved up.
Yeah. Okay. Go on though. So you find this abandoned BMP.
But there's a video on TikTok from one of my friends, and he is in this BMP where he's taking fire from the Russians, and he just like gets in the gunner's hatch and ducks. There's a video like that. But I don't really remember getting shot at around that BMP. But I don't know. I don't know why I got shot at there. I don't remember getting shot at when I was near the BMP. But I remember that when we were at that BMP, we were waiting, and I didn't really know what we were waiting for, but I guess we were waiting for the Ukrainians to come and drive the BMP away. And I didn't know that. I thought we were just waiting there for some random reason. And then when we're waiting there, the tank starts shooting at us again. And then I'm hiding under the BMP. I started hiding under the BMP. And then I remember I'm just going to like sleep there. Like it was daytime at this time. And we sleep there. And I take a nap during the day. But, like we didn't sleep at night. And then I remember I woke up to the Russians shooting at us again with the tank. And I remember before I went under the BMP, so there's the BMP and there's the 2 tire tracks. And then in the front of the BMP, there's this big space where you can crawl under it, right? And I remember that. So I remember I took something and I took like my friend's rucksack and I put it in front of me. And then I took like some pieces of metal and I put it in front of me also. And in that hole in the front. And then when we start getting shot at, I guess it saved my life because when we looked at that, like we were getting shelled and stuff. So I didn't look at it at that time. But after the shelling like died down and got slower or whatever, and the tank stopped firing so much, then I looked at it and I saw like a bunch of holes in there and dents and stuff from the shrapnel. And like there's another guy with me there too. Like we laid under there together. And so I guess I saved him in my life by putting those things in front of me. And like I think he was telling me something like, "You think that'll stop shrapnel?" I was like, "It's better than nothing." And then like later on, like after the assault and after we like went back to our village and there's no assault anymore, later on my friend who I put his rucksack in there, he was looking through his rucksack and he found shrapnel in it. So I think that was from the same event. I mean, he could have got shrapnel from anything, I guess, but I think that was the same thing. And so we're just getting shelled there. And then eventually we end up moving, like the Ukrainians took those BMPs and then we end moving forward down the tree line, and we come to this tree line, and it's like a T intersection of trees with spaces in between, with grass in between. And it's a T section.
Just
and
to
then
be sure, this is still the second day, right? This is still the second day of this?
Yeah, this would be the second day we slept. So then we approach this T intersection, so we're on the right side of it, and then our tree line is a horizontal tree line, meaning it's not going left, like up to the front line. And then the tree line that's like making the long part of the T, I guess, or whatever, not the top of the T, but the straight, like that's like in front of us, and that's where the Russians are.
Okay.
And so we're just kind of like sitting there, and we're just kind of laying down, taking our positions, and we're like, there were some trenches there. But we're mostly just like behind trees and stuff on the dirt. And then we start getting shot at. So this was like my first firefight. Well, my first firefight was actually way back in the story in Norman Brigade when Ukrainians shot at me, and we received friendly fire. So that was actually the first time I got shot at, was back in Norman Brigade, but that was friendly fire. So now, in this part of the story, this would be my first time the Russians ever shot at me. So when the Ukrainians shot at me, I never shot back because I kind of thought it was friendly fire because like I said, in Norman Brigade, we're like 8 kilometers from the Russians, so I was wondering why we were getting shot at. But it was the Ukrainians
You were 8 kilometers from the front line, and Ukrainians just were like, "Yep, those are the enemies."
Yeah, that's the problem in war when people are too scared.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, they were too scared. They're paranoid. And then they heard people speaking English and they thought, oh, a foreign language, let's shoot at them. I don't know what the logic was. And then there was a Ukrainian guy with us in this story, like our translator, and he yelled out at them. I remember this British guy, when the Ukrainians were shooting at us, this British guy said, he was like, yo, get your boys in line. Because this guy was just like 18 years old, so he was scared. He was like frozen. And then this British guy's like, yo, get your boys in line. And then the Ukrainian starts railing out in Ukrainian. And he's like, friendly, friendly. And then they yell back, and then they stop shooting at us. I was about to shoot at them because it was pitch black that night. They were shooting at us, and I was about to shoot at them. And I put my rifle where I thought the bullets were coming, and I was about to like shoot back. And then eventually they started calling out, so I never shot. But anyways, that was back in Norman Brigade, previous in the story. So now we're at this T intersection, and then we start taking fire from the Russians now. So they're above us in this vertical tree line. Vertical meaning like it's going north and south up the front line. And they're shooting at us from those trees. But they're in the tree line, so like we don't know where they are exactly. And I would imagine they don't see us either. But they're shooting at us because we were talking. Like we got complacent. and we started talking with each other, so they probably heard us. And so they start shooting at us. And so I shot like a few rounds back,
Just
but not much. Like I didn't really
random
know
like
where they were.
suppression? Were you shooting at muzzle flashes, or were you just shooting at the sound of the gunfire?
With no muzzle flashes because it was the daytime.
Oh
So
yeah.
you can't really see muzzle flashes in the daytime. So I was just shooting at where the sounds were coming from.
Okay.
Because we thought I mean I had an idea where they were. Then I heard it, the bullets. So like the gunfire. So I was shooting into that tree line. Um but it was like so quick. It was like just a couple minutes or something. Maybe not even. I don't know. It was so quick. Like they're just shooting at us, and then I almost died there because my friend almost shot me. This is the problem with untrained people. Like one of my friends, he had a SBD, and he shot at me, and it hit the tree right next to me. So I was taking cover behind a tree during this firefight, and I only shot a few rounds at that time, but and the bullet went right through the tree. And I didn't know at the time. I thought at the time it was the Russians who were trying to shoot at me, and that the bullet went like through the tree. But later he told me that it was him. Like way after the firefight, like months after or something, he told me that that was him who shot at me, and that's why I saw the bullet hole. I guess it didn't go through the whole tree, right? A tree can stop a bullet, I
Yeah,
think. So
yeah,
that's
they can.
why I saw the yeah, and I got like a little as like a little scratch on my wrist because the bullet went through the tree. It was like next to my head. I was like taking like aim on the tree, and so like the tree was next to my head, and then the bullet went right at the tree. So it was right like the bullet went like inches from my head, and then I got like wounded or not wounded, but like a little scratch or something because the splinters from the tree, the bullet hit the tree and the wood hit into my wrist, and then I was like bleeding a little bit. Um, But yeah, so that was that firefight. It was like a very small firefight, and then the way the firefight ended, I was so confused because the Russian he was yelling at us in Russian. It was like cussing at us or something, using swear words, and I don't know what they were saying. But then my Ukrainian like company commander was like yelling back at them, and I was so confused. I was like, why are we like talking to each other? Were we just like friendly firing? But no, they were Russians and they were just cussing at us. And then so my Ukrainian commander, he just cussed back at them. Well, like we were so close to each other in the tree lines, to the different tree lines, we could yell at each other, but we didn't really see each other because we were both hidden in the foliage, and it's summertime. Um. So then after that, we ended up like so now we had like an idea where they were. They were in that tree line. We knew for sure because they just shot at us and yelled at us from there. So now we went from left to right. So the tree line that they were shooting at us was to our left, going vertical, and we're in a horizontal one. And then we went to the other tree line going like to the left. So now that tree line is to our right. And it was like a T intersection of tree lines. So there's like a little bit of grass in between these three tree lines, but not like just like 50 meters or something, not big. And so then we go over there, and then we kind of just like camp out there for a little bit during this day. And I remember like when we're walking through that T intersection of tree lines, like we're walking on the grass outside the woods, and there was a Russian dead body there. Like I guess that was probably the first time I saw a Russian body that close. And there's just a Russian dead body right there on that tree line, or like in the grass, just like and there's flies on it and stuff. And we just like walked right over it, over the body. It was like in our way. So, and then we get into the tree line, and then we're just kind of waiting there. We're getting shelled, and like during this time that they're like shelling us, it was like everything would hit us. Like they shot mortars at us, and then they would shoot artillery at us, and then the tank would come and shoot at us, and then you'd hear the helicopter, and then it would shoot at us. Like helicopters will shoot an indirect fire at you from far away, and then the helicopter will shoot at you. They're
Yeah,
just shooting everything at us.
just for historical context, during the Kharkiv counteroffensive, the Russians were completely like on the retreat, and in this process, they were just firing everything. And along with
But it
that,
wasn't at this time yet.
oh, was it not?
But it
Okay.
wasn't. I don't think it was at this time yet.
Oh, okay. Well, also, this is something I wanted to mention before was you were fighting the 4th Guards Tank Division, which I guess some people say is like the best fucking tank division in the Russian army. So pretty pretty hardcore. Probably has something to do with why that tank
I
was
guess.
so accurate. But
I guess
go
I
on.
heard they have P80s. Like, I guess that unit, because they're in like a more elite unit, they had T80s, which is like a better tank, because usually most Russians are using T72s.
72s.
And I guess that's why the tank was accurate fire, because the T80s have thermal. But I guess you can just modify the T72s with thermals nowadays. But anyways, yeah. Well, so this assault was on Ukrainian Independence Day. We did the assault on Ukrainian Independence Day. So
Do you know what
that's
day
like
that is?
late August. That's like late August or something.
1 second. I'm gonna.
Like August 20 something.
That is August 24th. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So that's why I was saying, like, I don't think they were in retreat at that time, unless they were retreating for weeks.
No, I think the retreat started in September. I could be wrong, but somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Either early September, late August. But go
But
on.
by the way, like this is like, I think, the untold story of the Kharkiv counteroffensive, because the offensive actually started on Ukrainian Independence Day. But if you look at the news or the Wikipedia articles, it'll just say it started in September.
Yeah, like September 11th or
And it'll
whatever.
say, yeah, and it'll say that they broke through at Baliklava, which was to the north of where we were. But we started pushing them before that. But anyway, so then we go to that next tree line to the left of us, and then we just kind of camp out there, and then we split up again. So the 8 of us and the 8 of us split up again. So immediately, like where we were at that T intersection, my group stayed there, and then the original group that went more forward than us, and then we linked up with later. Then they went forward down the tree line to the left. Now, to the left of us was the area that was supposed to be secured by the 93rd Brigade, if you remember me talking about that. Apparently, they never ended up doing their job fully. So then our left and to the front of us was like encircled almost. So we thought Russians were on both sides of us. And so they ended up going like all the way down the tree line to where it ends, and then we ended up staying at the place where the intersection is, where the Russians are still in front of us. And then we were just kind of like getting complacent. We were eating there for a few hours, and then we started like talking to each other. I think we were like eating. Like we had like some Russian MREs we found or something, so we started eating the Russian MREs at that place, and we were like so hungry. And then this is when one of my friends, like, he saw, again, he's another American, and he said he saw the Russians. And then he said to us, "Hey, is there anybody supposed to be walking up that tree line right now?" And then I said, "Hell no, that's definitely Russians." So then I was like, I was like a little bit back from the edge of the tree line, because I was like eating there. And like he was the one pulling security, I guess. So then, I said, "Oh hell no, that's definitely Russian." So then I got my rifle and put my helmet on, and then I rushed over there, and then I just took up a target and aimed. So this was like the first time ever I saw a Russian, except like that dead body I saw. Like, we were just like a couple hours before that. This was like the first time ever I saw like a real life Russian infantryman, and then like we took up aim, and we just like fired at them. Like, they were just out in the open in the grass. I don't know what they were doing there. It's almost like kind of a blur to me right now, but like, and I almost forget if they were walking towards us at the time or if they were walking away from us at the time. But whatever happened, they ended up walking away from us because we were shooting at them. And I had an LPVO sight, like a 1 to 8 times sight on my AK, and I put it max, and I guess they were about 300 meters away from us, and I just started shooting, and like I probably shot like I had an RPK mag in, so I always carried an RPK mag in my gun, so a 40 round mag, and then all my other mags would have been 30 round standard mags. So I shot the RPK mag fully, like I shot all the 40 rounds, and then I think I did another mag change after that, so I shot 30 rounds, so 70, and then I shot like half of another magazine because I was carrying like probably 7 mags, right? So 8 mags, I think maybe I was carrying like 8 mags. So they're just like out in the open. I don't know. There's probably like 20 of them, 20 Russians just out in the open, and I was just shooting like the whole time, like at them on target. And I don't know what happened to them. We never confirmed the kills because we didn't go over there. We didn't clear that area and assault that place. But we just kept shooting until we didn't see him anymore. I mean, I remember I shot at some guys and then like I saw their body fall, I guess. Kind of a blur though.
So when you're
Yeah, we
firing,
just shoot.
someone is in your crosshair. Like someone is in the middle of your optic when you're shooting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they were wearing like these weird uniforms because when I was looking at them, it was like they were wearing multicam. And they had like these tan plate carriers on. But the normal Russian uniform is like that green woodland green. So I don't know what those guys were wearing. Maybe they were Spetsnaz. I have no idea. I don't know why they looked like that, but they weren't very good. They were Spetsnaz. Like, who walked out in the open like that? Deadman, I guess. So, and I guess I remember they were trying to drag one of their guys off. Like one of their guys got wounded or killed or something, and then they were trying to drag the body off, but then we just shot him. So that happened. And then after that, we just didn't see them anymore, so we stopped firing. And then we kind of just like sat around and then waited. Just, hang out, did nothing. And then our platoon sergeant, the Ukrainian platoon sergeant came and he came to get us. And then he said, okay, now we're going over here. So now we're going to link up further with the other group that went down. But we're only going to meet them halfway. We're not going to go all the way to the end like they went. We're going to meet halfway in that tree line. But I guess what happened is that during that time, at the same exact time that we were shooting those Russians out in the open, the other group of us that went all the way to the end, they got in a firefight at the same exact time as we did, and then they took 2 casualties, 2 KIAs. Because I guess what happened was they were all the way at the end of the tree line, and they're at like 2 tree lines that came together. So like there's just one little gap in the tree line, and then the tree line continued. And I guess they saw a Russian, and for some reason, one of my friends, one of the British guy, he said that he told the Russian, "Go drop your weapon," and then my other friend, like an American, he said, "No, shoot him." And then he shot him, and he died. Like, the Russian died. And this is what the story they told me. This was happening at the same exact time we were shooting our guys. So the 2 firefights happened at the same time. And then those guys, and then I guess they got in a firefight, and there was more than just the one guy they saw. There was some other guys in that tree line across from them, like 50 meters or something. So our firefight was like a long range firefight, and theirs was like a close ambush almost. And they were just shooting like 50 meters from each other. And one of my friends told me that he shot one of the Russians in the head and saw his head explode. And then 2 of our friends died. It was one Australian guy and one British guy who died during that firefight. And then I guess the firefight ended.
Just wondering, is this the situation? I think it was an American, so maybe I'm wrong, but is this a situation where someone died because they were like online and the guy walked out of the tree line to grab like an AK or something or to loot bodies and he got killed? Is that the situation?
That's what I was told, but I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there, and the guys who were there told us like that he did run out of the tree line. So that was the Australian guy who did that. He did run out of the tree line, but like basically we don't know why he did that. It could have been to loot the bodies, but we don't know like what was in his head, right? Because he died now, so we don't know why he did that. But he did run out of the tree line, I guess. And then I guess the other guy died because he didn't take cover fast enough or something, and then he got shot, like in the neck or something. He wasn't like online properly. I don't know. That's what I was told. But anyways, that firefight ended, and I mean, I guess our guys won it because the Russians retreated and they didn't have to retreat their position. So I guess that's a win. You don't lose your territory. But then we met those guys in the middle. And then at this point, the sun was going down, so it was getting to night. And like, yeah, we're still getting shelled all day. Like, everything's still happening. The tank is always firing at us. Mortars are coming. We hear the helicopters. And then we get down at night. And then same thing as the previous night. We start digging some trenches because we're just on fresh ground. So we start digging some stuff for the night. And we're like in the middle of the tree line. And then we're like all super exhausted at this time. Like our two friends just died, and then we're just like all tired, and we're asking like, oh, when are we gonna go home? Like, are we going home tomorrow night? We're asking like our company commander that. And we stay that night, and like this night was like worse than the last night because I think they were shooting at us more that night. And I remember because we didn't sleep really that night. Like maybe I got a couple hours of sleep that night or something, but we didn't really sleep that night. And I remember when I was like in my trench that we dug, like me and my friend, I guess he was sleeping because we were doing like 50% security, and he was like sleeping. But you don't get that much sleep even with 50% security because you go to sleep late and then you wake up early. So your 50% is only for 6 hours, and then 50% of 6 hours is like 3 hours. And then it takes you a little bit of time to sleep. Like you don't fall asleep immediately. It takes people like 15 minutes to sleep, right? So anyways, but I remember I was the one on security and he was like laying down or something. I don't even know if he was asleep at that time, but he was laying down. And I was just watching like the battle go on. So we were getting shelled. The tank started shooting at us all the time. And then our Ukrainian tank from like way behind us, like a kilometer, 2 kilometers away from us, behind us, like came to the rescue and started shooting at the Russian tank who was shooting at us all day. And then like I just remember I was watching that. So it was like the same thing I said like back in the video. Like, you know, you're just kind of sitting there and the war's happening above you, right? And you're just watching like people shoot at each other. And so that's what I was watching. The tanks were firing at each other. And I remember like this one time I saw one of the missiles and I was like the tank shell, and I like saw it like seaming through the air like a glowing thing. And I was like, it was like a movie, right? And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And then that happened for like a little bit and they kept firing at each other. And then I saw the Ukrainian tank shoot, and then I saw the Russian tank explode. And I was kind of surprised the Russian tank was that close for me to see it explode, because I thought it was just shooting at us from like farther away. But it was still kind of far. It might have been a kilometer away, but I saw it explode because I remember it was like a mushroom. Like and like the sparks flying out of it. So I was like, that looks like a tank exploding. And then after that, it was quiet, and like, nothing happened. Like it was like peaceful after that because the Russian tank got exploded.
Is
So
this the
that
tank
that
that had
was
been shelling you for the last couple days?
yeah. I mean, there's probably two or three tanks that were shooting at us because how can one tank shoot that much?
Yeah, I was wondering that earlier.
But I mean, I don't know, right? I'm not in the drone looking at everything. I'm just there trying to stay alive. But it was probably at least two or three tanks. But that one tank, when it exploded, everything was pretty quiet after that. So I just remember that happened. And but then like that night, after that night, in the morning, like in the dawn, when the sun was still like just going up, but it was still dark, we had to go retrieve the bodies of the two guys who died. So they went over there, but I wasn't part of that team. But they went over there and they were carrying the bodies, and then they just like came, like the four of them that went over there, they came back to drop the bodies near us, and then we were just waiting there, like near our friends' bodies, and we were just waiting there, like I guess what happened is a truck came, or was it an ATV? I forget, a truck or an ATV came to go get the bodies, and then we were kind of wondering like, why don't we go on that truck and get out of here? So we just stayed there for another like half a day. And not too much happened during that half a day or something. Or no, that morning. We didn't even stay there half a day. We just left that morning. And it was kind of interesting because when we were leaving, we were going all the way back that horizontal tree line from where we came, from where I said the BMPs were, and then we had to cross those open fields. And we were the last to leave. But from my training in the U.S. Army, if you're the very first element, which we were the very first element. Why would we be the last to leave?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So the Ukrainians just hightailed it out of there and they left, like before us. So when we were walking back to those tree lines, because when we went forward and forward from those tree lines, like I was saying, the Ukrainians would take those positions after us. So it's not like we just left it, like the Ukrainians were coming behind us, and that's how that happened. So they were there. But then, like, when we left that morning, so this would be the third day, basically, and then when we left that morning, they were just gone. And we were just walking through tree lines with nobody there. And, yeah, it's like they should have stayed to cover us. So we were just walking in, like, no man's land, basically, at that time because they left. And then, we just had to walk through the open fields. And I remember they were saying, like, before that, the other days, they were saying, like, oh, there could be, like, Russians in this tree line because it's not been cleared yet. And then when we walked out across the open field, we were walking right next to that tree line. And I was saying, like, this is not smart. But we walked across that open field back to our original position, the position I said that, like, I went to many times. And then when we were there were Ukrainians there. And they just like they just were like looking at us like, damn, like these guys just saw hell or something. Like they just had this look on their face, and then they were looking at us because we were all dirty and stuff. Like they didn't really say much to us. They were just like shocked. And then we just like continued to walk away after, like, we just stopped there for a little bit, and then we continued to walk away down there. And then we came to this other position like further away from there. And I remember, like, we stopped there or something, and then I don't remember what happened, but one of my American friends, he got like mad at one of the Ukrainians, and he like tried to fight him or something because the Ukrainian like the Ukrainian told him, like, yeah, I think this is what happened. The Ukrainian told us, like, you can't stay here, and then we're saying, like, why we can't stay here? Like, we're just sitting here to rest and waiting for our vehicle, and they're like, no, don't stay here. We're gonna get bombed if you stay here. There's too much people. And then my friend got mad at him and just like tried to fight him. We had to stop him. But then we kept going and we kept walking, and then we came to the point where the truck would pick us up. And I remember I was the first in the truck, and then the truck would come back for the second group. And then we got up on this hill where we could overlook where we came from in this valley. And then the guys that were left there, they started getting shelled on that position. I guess what that Ukrainian thought would happen happened. But they started getting shelled on that position. And then like they didn't even wait for the truck. They just like walked away. They just walked back to where we were because they didn't want to wait for the truck because they were getting shelled, and then they just left. So after that, after the whole assault was over, we went back to the village, and we basically like a bunch of our guys had concussions from all the shelling.
Sorry.
And so
this is the end of the assault?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna end this part here. Alright, we're back at second part of the Kharkiv counteroffensive. This is after the assault we were just talking about. He's just returning from the assault. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got back to this from the assault to our village, the place we normally like keep all our gear and stay at. So a lot of our guys from that assault had concussions and stuff. I guess I didn't have that concussion. I just have like a hard head or something, or I was wearing my helmet, I don't know. But
you're a hard-headed motherfucker.
But yeah, some guys had concussions. So basically, one of the medics convinced the Ukrainian leadership to send like every one of us who was on the assault to the hospital to check on our concussions. I just remember like I went to this hospital, and then they like were pumping me with all like the IVs and stuff. I had so much IVs in me, and then they were checking me if I had concussions and
I'm sorry,
and then
were you
they
actually wounded? You just got the small cut in your hand, right, from friendly fire?
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with that. But like I said, they're testing us for concussions.
But why do they have to stick an IV in you? I'm just wondering.
I guess that's the treatment for concussion.
Oh, okay. Go on.
Like when you have a concussion, I guess you're dehydrated or something. So you need to hydrate. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but that's just what they were doing. So I had a bunch of IVs in me, and they were testing me. But eventually I got tired of it, and I was like, hey, I feel fine. But let me go back to the front. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, this is getting silly. I remember I walked around that town the hospital was in a little bit, and I saw like some stuff. It was like kind of almost normal life in that place, but it wasn't that far from the front. But anyways, then I just like escaped to that place, and they discharged me or whatever. Told them I want to leave, and then I went back to the aid station. I thought I was just gonna go back to the front, and then they just dropped me off at the like aid station, which is near that same place, like 18 kilometers from the front, near like our main battalion headquarters and bases and stuff. And we just went to the aid station, and then we just kind of hung out there, I guess. And I guess our Ukrainian leadership just let us like have some time off, and they didn't care if we went back right away. And we just kind of waited there. And then once the other guys who were like, some guys, they went further, like to a further city, to a further hospital. I just went to like a closer hospital. But some of the other guys, they like actually had concussions, so they sent them a little bit farther away. Not to Kyiv or anything like that, just kind of like a closer city to the front, but farther from where I went. And basically, yeah, we just kind of hung out there for like a week or something at the aid station once all our guys came back. And then after that, we just started doing our like daily, routine again. We went back to the front, and we took up our new positions. So those new positions that we assaulted before during that 3-day story, we started going there. Except we went to this new position I never been to before, but I guess it was the position that the Colombian guys, like the Latino company, they assaulted that area, and now we were gonna go there to where they liberated, I guess you can say, and we were gonna go there to that position they took. That was my last position I would ever go to. I remember on the way to there, we were walking through the wood lines, and we were just getting shelled the whole way, like by a tank or something, or by artillery. Like it was like the tank was following us all the way. It was like different at this time. It was like they were more on guard with our movement. Like they were tracking us when we were walking through, and they would shoot at us. So like it was kind of dangerous just to get there. But then once we got there, we were like in these nice Russian bunkers, which it was so weird, those Russian bunkers, because I guess they left, but they left a bunch of trash in their bunkers. And like when we have our bunkers, we clean up the trash and we put it in like a sandbag, like a sandbag bag, not with sand in it, but a bag of, sandbag for sand. So we put our trash in there usually, or another type of bag. The Russians, they just left the trash like everywhere. Like so much trash is everywhere, just left all over the place.
This is something
And like,
I've heard across the internet that the Russians are pretty dirty.
yeah, they don't know how to take care of things. Like the Ukrainians and like us foreigners, we were always clean up after ourselves. So they don't do that. And then also you want to clean up after yourself because it's easy to see pieces of trash on the drum. It gives away your position.
Yeah, it's
They're just not smart.
Bro, I guess that's why they're called the orcs, right?
So yeah, exactly. But they kind of had like nice bunkers. I don't know. The Russians know how to dig nice bunkers. I think they use equipment though. But they had like one of the bunker I took, or not a bunker, but it was like a little like foxhole trench sort of thing that I took. It had like hay in it, so it was like warm. It was getting like cold at that time because it was September, so it was getting like warm. And it was like warm in the hay. They put like hay in their trench. That was kind of cool. I never seen that before. Not too much happened. Not too much happened when we were there. Just the occasional shelling. That was the last position I would ever go to. Oh, so another thing happened though is as soon as we got back from that 3-day assault of Independence Day, we were getting like shelled like no tomorrow. Like it was, yeah, maybe they were retreating, like you said. I don't know, but they must have been retreating for a long time. I mean, like when we got back from there, it was like we were getting shelled like no tomorrow. And like it was accurate fire, like on our village house. It was like probably the worst shelling I've ever experienced ever, just because it was so accurate and so close to us. And like I was in the bunker, like on the bunker behind that house, and it was just like the ground was shaking everywhere, and it was like right on top of us. I thought we were gonna die. And then this was one of the moments that really stuck out to me because one of my friends, and like in like this one of this medic guy, like I guess that Latvian guy I can say, and then one of the other guys, they were like arguing with our company commander, and he was saying, "Look, our assault failed, and which in retrospect it didn't fail, but we had no idea if it failed or not at that time. All we knew is that we left our position and now we're getting shelled." But he was saying, "Oh, but now we know from history like the Turkey counteroffensive was successful." But he was saying, "Oh, the assault failed, and now we're getting shelled, and our position is compromised, and they have us zeroed in. And in order to save lives, we have to retreat from this position and make it like a new place to live." And our commander was like, "Oh no, we're not going to do that. Like, well, I mean, we'll consider it, but for now, we'll just stay." And then I remember like one of the guys who was also arguing with the commander. Like later on, he came down to our bunker also again, and then he was saying like, "Oh," he was complaining like, "Oh, this is stupid. Like, we should leave. Like, Ukrainian leadership, they don't care about us. They're just gonna get us killed." And this has really stuck out to me because that guy from New Zealand, that guy who fought in Burma and the New Zealand Army and stuff, he was saying to him like, he was just saying like, this is a war, and you want war. Well, this is it. this is what you signed up for. And, you know, like, that really stuck out to me because they were arguing with each other and they were like, oh, we should leave. And he was like, oh, no, it's fine. Nothing, you know, this is just how it is. And then, like, I was kind of like going back and forth in my mind on like which one's right and which one's wrong, you know, like, and it was like a debate. And then when he said like, this is a war and you want a war, well, this is it. And I'm just like, you know, he's right. Like, we're in a war. What do you expect to happen?
So basically, like, the guy was Lieutenant Spears.
Yeah, I guess.
Just what you're talking
I mean,
about.
everybody
Like,
reacts differently in war, so.
it reminded me of where he's like, yeah, you have to accept you're already dead. But go on.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it wasn't exactly like that, but it was just reality. I mean, yeah, you get shelled, but whatever, you know, like. Anyway, so when we went to the aid station for our concussions and stuff, and then we came back, and then we went to that position, and then we came back to the village house after like 2 or 3 days on that position, and then that's like the same exact shelling happened again, like exactly like the same, you know, intensity, the same consistency, the same closeness, you know, the same exact shelling happened again. And so I went to the same exact bunker that I was hiding in the previous time before we left the aid station. This is like about September. I don't know when it happened, September 9th, 10th. And, you know, we're just getting shelled, and there was like 6 of us in that bunker. And, you know, it just kept getting closer and closer. And then I remember this one time during that shelling, like it was so close and it was just shelling and shelling, and there was 2 tanks firing at us. I remember there was 2 tanks firing at us because we heard it from one direction and then you can hear it like boom and then it explode. It's not like artillery where you hear the whistle. You don't hear that, but like the tank you can hear it firing before it reaches you. And then so you can hear the boom from far away and then you hear the boom exploding in your face, right? But there's no like whistle like an artillery because tanks shoot too straight. But we can hear the 2 tanks firing. So one was coming from like our front, and one was coming like from to the right. I guess I don't know how to explain it, but I guess what's that? East. One from our east, I guess, and one is from our north. So we heard the 2 tanks firing at us, and I remember like I was counting it, and I was you know thinking about like the time that it takes to fire, and it blow up, and then I remember like. Oh, I left like my gear. Like I was just there with not a plate carrier or something. I think I brought my helmet and my ear pros, but I didn't bring my plate carrier. I just went into the bunker. Because I didn't have it on at the time, so I just kind of took cover right away. Didn't think about it. But then I was remembering like, oh well, I think I brought my rifle with me, but I was like, oh my gear and like my rucksack and stuff is over there, and I don't want it to get blown up. So I was counting the shots, and then I was like, okay, it exploded. So then I went right after the last explosion because I like 2 of the tanks would shoot, but they would shoot like around the same time, and then it would blow up around the same time, and then it would take like 15 seconds for the next shot. So I remember I was counting it, and then I went right after the last shot, and it was just like I just had to go up the stairs of the bunker into my like place I sleep, and then I had to go back. So I get it, and then I went back into the bunker, and I remember my friends were like, "Oh, hurry, the next tank will fire." And then I went in there, and I was safe, and nothing happened. That was like kind of a stupid thing to do, but I figured like, oh, well, I don't want my gear to get blown up, and then I have no gear for later, and like maybe I can die later because I don't have a plate carrier. So I figured it was worth it, and I thought it was safe because I can just count when the tank's gonna fire next. But then, yeah, I got back in the bunker and I was safe. And then after that, we were just like getting shelled. And then like a huge explosion happened right next to us. It like hit the stairway of the bunker. And then it was like a huge, like almost like the movies, like a big, like everything shook. The whole bunker shook. And then there was like a fireball, and everything in my vision became orange. Like my whole vision became orange, like a movie or something. And it was just like for a second. And then after that, like I remember like my friends, like I was sitting on like this bunk bed of the bunker, and a couple of my friends were sitting like or standing in the middle, and they like fell over because the explosion was so much, and then they got back up, and then I remember I was like I felt like this burning sensation in my leg, and I was like, what is that? Why do I feel like I'm on fire? And then I was like, oh crap. And then I screamed out like, oh, I'm wounded. Cause like, I don't know, like that's how it feels when you get wounded, but it's like a burning sensation, I guess, because the force of the shell of the shrapnel is so great that it makes like a friction, and it feels like you're on fire. That I didn't know what it would feel like that. So I was like, what is this feeling? Why do I feel like and I looked, I'm like, why do I feel like I'm on fire? And I was like, oh, that must be, I'm wounded. And then I tried to move my leg, and I'm like, oh, I can't move my leg. I'm definitely wounded. And I remember I screamed out like, oh, I'm wounded. And then my other friend who was sitting next to me, my Argentinian friend, the one who like almost killed me and shot at me with the SVD, he was sitting right next to me. And then he said, oh, I'm wounded. Or I said, I guess this is how he recalls it. He told me, I said, oh, I think I'm wounded. And then he said, oh, I'm definitely wounded. And so his wound was like much greater than mine. I only got hit in my fibula bone, which is like the smaller bone in your lower leg. Like I got hit like a little bit above my ankle. Like, it like completely shattered it, but he got hit in his knee. So his whole kneecap shattered. Or like his knee and his tibia bone, like the big bone. His tibia bone, the bigger bone in your lower leg. So it hit him like right there in between the knee and the tibia. So it shattered like both the knee and the tibia, I guess. And so he got like a lot worse wounded than me. But I didn't really know what happened at the time. And I remember like we were kind of laying like back to back when we were wounded. And I remember like my friends were kind of freaking out, not knowing what was going on. And so I remember like they were saying like, oh, like someone was saying like, oh, tourniquet. And I think, yeah, someone was like, tourniquet, where's a tourniquet? And then I had one like right in my pocket here. And then I said, oh, I have a tourniquet. And then I reached out with it and took it out. And then I gave it to them. And then they took the tourniquet and then they gave it to my friend who was also wounded. And I was like, what's this? Like, I gave you my tourniquet and you're not going to put it on me. And then they found a different tourniquet and then put that on me. And that was weird. But he was worsely wounded than me. So
I have a question. You're a U.S. Army trained infantryman, and your arms work, but you didn't put the tourniquet on yourself?
Well, you're in pain.
Okay.
I mean, I could have put it on myself, like, you know, if I had to. But like if my leg was hurt, right? So when your leg is hurt, like just to sit up, it hurts. And then like you have to kind of, I don't know, like I just gave it to them so they could put it on. I mean, there's like 4 other guys there. So why am I going to do it? I mean, I wasn't really like thinking that much at that time. It's just like happening very fast.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But I reached out and gave him my tourniquet from my pocket, and then they gave it to my friend. I had no idea at the time though. Like I don't know. I didn't really even see him. We were like laying back to back almost with each other, so I didn't really see him. And then they put the tourniquet on me. And then I remember like a few minutes passed or something, and we were still getting shelled. Like the shelling didn't stop, so we were under fire, and the shelling was like super close to our bunker, and like while this was all happening. And I like then a few minutes passed or something like that, and then I remember I was like, "Oh, you need a pressure dressing. Like put a pressure dressing on me." But my friends, they're just like in shock, I guess. I don't know. They don't know what to do. So I was like, oh, put a pressure dressing on it next. And so they put the pressure dressing on it. And then I realized, like a few minutes more passed, and then I realized they didn't even pack the wound. Like they didn't even pack my wound. with the pressure dressing. But and then while this is happening, like the real medics are like focusing on my friend who's wounded because I guess he was more wounded worse than me, and they're like giving him painkiller shots, and they're like, I guess they're packing his wound or something. I don't know. Like the actual medics are there, and then just like my friends, they're just helping me. And because they were screaming out like, "Oh, we need a medic!" So then the medics came, and then uh and then I remember like a few minutes passed or something, and then I remember like I didn't just get wounded in my left leg with the fibula shattered. There was like a flesh wound that I had in my foot. No bones broke in my foot, but there was like a flesh wound there, and it took a while for me to realize. But I was like, but then I told my friend, I was like, oh, I think I'm also wounded in my right foot. And then he looked at it, and then he said, oh yeah, you're bleeding there. And then he said, oh, I'll put a tourniquet on your leg. And I was like, no, don't put a tourniquet there. And then I said, just put a pressure dressing on that. Because I kind of knew like it wasn't that bad. Because it was I don't know how I knew, but I kind of just knew like it was just like a smaller one compared to the other one. So I said, no, I don't want a tourniquet. And then I went so then we got evacuated from that bunker. We had to like wait for them to get the vehicle ready. But we got evacuated from there. So I went first. I don't know why they decided what, but I went first, I think. And I remember I was at the stairs of the bunker. They were trying to evacuate me in the stretcher. And then like my head was like at the bottom, and they were bringing my feet up first. And they were like almost falling. And they were like almost like they couldn't like pick me up. They were like slipping, and I was like too heavy or something. And like the stairs were steep. And then like I remember I was telling them like, oh, you're gonna drop me. Like, let's just go back. You're gonna drop me, and then I'm gonna get wounded more. And then they said, no, you're gonna be like, we're not gonna drop you. We're gonna get you up here. And then but I remember another thing like before this, I forgot this one. Like right after I got wounded, like because of that fireball happened, what I said that it went into my eyes and it was everything was orange. Right after that, when I was wounded, there was like a fire inside the bunker, and like there was a backpack on fire. It was like I guess it was my other friend who got wounded next to me. It was his backpack that got on fire. I guess he had like some propane in there that for cooking, like for cooking in a stove or like a camp stove. So he had like propane in his bag, and then that caught on fire. So then I was just thinking to myself like, well, we're dead. Like, we're gonna die for sure. Like, if we don't die from this tank who keeps shooting at us and will never stop, well, we're surely gonna die from the fire inside the bunker, right? Like, where do we go? We either go outside where we're gonna die, or we're gonna stay in here where we're gonna die to the fire. And then, like, my friend, he's like Scottish, and my friend, he takes the bag and he just throws it outside the bunker. And I was like, oh wow, that was smart. Okay, we're not gonna die.
The Scottish friend, or is that the person dating the medic?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, so then they evacuated me, and then like we got up that stairs, and like I remember like the guys who were there was like 6 guys on my stretcher or something like that. I don't know. And they were evacuating me. And then like I think like they almost fell. It's like the girl medic, like Snake, she like it was too heavy for her or something, and she almost fell, I think. But then she didn't. I remember that. And then she took me to the truck. They took me to the truck, and I went on the back of the truck bed on the stretcher. And then my company commander was driving the truck, and then I was in the back laying down. And then she was like she was almost like kind of like on top of me, like holding me down so I wouldn't bounce. But I guess she was also like checking my pulse, which like it was like I don't know. I mean, like she was just like a girl medic, like kind of on top of me. I mean, kind of like felt good because the girl was holding you when you're like hurt. She was just like checking my pulse, I guess. And then like and then it's like I remember like the road was so bumpy because they're not paved roads on the front, they're just like dirt roads. And like my company commander, he was like driving super fast, and it was like I was like telling the girl like, oh, can he drive slower? Like it hurts my leg so much going over all these bumps, and maybe my leg will get hurt more. And then she said, no, we can't drive slower because we're in an active artillery zone. So then we like met this like ambulance in the middle, like halfway in between like the next town where like main base is, where the hospital would be. We met this like artillery, this ambulance, and it was almost like a makeshift ambulance. It was like this truck that had like an ambulance in the back of it. And then I remember I waited there, and I told the medic there, it was like a Ukrainian medic, I guess, I don't know, but he spoke good English. I remember I was telling him, oh, take the tourniquet off of me. Take the tourniquet off. It hurts. Like a tourniquet hurts more than when you're wounded, like because it's cutting off your blood circulation, and the tourniquet hurts so bad. And I was telling him, take the tourniquet off. Take the tourniquet off. And he's like, no, I'm not going to take the tourniquet off. I'm going to evaluate you first. And I said, oh, I'm fine. Just take it off. And then I remember I loosened it myself. Like while he was checking my wound, which was further down my leg, because the tourniquet's about like on the thigh, and then I started loosening it myself, and I was like, "Nah, this hurts too much." And then that was like when I was taking it off. That was like I guess when he was done with his evaluation, and then he said, "Oh yeah, your wound is okay, it's stabilized, so we can take it off. But you should have waited for me to say that." And then I remember then my friend comes after that because he got on the truck had to go back to get him. And then my friend comes like right after that. And then he said the same thing as me. Like when he got in the truck in the ambulance, he said the same exact thing. It was like a bunk bed truck, like ambulance. And I was on the top bunk. And then he comes and then he's on the bottom bunk of me. And then he said the same exact thing as me. He said, take the tourniquet off. Oh, please, just take this tourniquet off. And then I think he took it off or he loosened it or something. Because at that time, like, the wound's more stabilized. And then we went to the hospital, like the closest hospital to us. And I remember I went there and they gave me like IVs or something. And they gave me like painkillers. I had like one shot of painkiller in that bunker. And then they gave me more, like another shot or something at the first hospital. And I remember like maybe they changed my bandages, I guess. They probably changed my bandages. And then I remember I had like damage on my face. Like little like shrapnel pieces or something from the explosion. And then they were like trying to get it off. I remember they did that there. And then I went to another hospital. This was like the same hospital I went to when I had that concussion. And I went to another hospital, and then I stayed the night there. And then I remember I stayed the night there. I guess they probably changed my bandages there or something, and then I stayed the night there. And then I remember I was in the wheelchair, and I left my room because I could use my arms to get myself onto the wheelchair. And then I left my room. So that's, I guess, how my wound wasn't that bad, right? Because I could actually move. And I got on the wheelchair. I couldn't walk at all or use crutches, but I got on the wheelchair and I was rolling myself down the room. And then I remember the door was open to where my friend was, and he was like getting worked on, like a surgery or something. Like they're changing his bandages or something. Like, but I remember he was like yelling, like in pain, and then he saw me and he was like, "Oh, my friend, hello." And then the Ukrainian doctor closed the door, and I was like, "Oh no, you're not. Don't come here." And then I basically went to another hospital in Kharkiv, like the main military hospital in Kharkiv, and then there, me and my friend went there together. And then I also like went on but I remember we were just in the hallway, Like we didn't even have a room. They just put us in the hallway because I guess there's so many wounded soldiers. They don't have room. So I was sleeping in the hallway, like on a hospital bed in the hallway. And then I remember like I went on my wheelchair or something, and I found my friend because he was on the same floor as me, but he was in like a different part of the hallway. So he was like a little bit far. So got on the wheelchair to go find him. Then I found him. He was laying there, and he was also in the hallway. And then one of our other friends who was wounded, he was like wounded like 2 weeks before this or a week before this or something. And then he met us there. He was like on a different floor of that hospital, but he met us there, and he like came up to there. He was on crutches at that time. Um, and he met us there. And yeah, and then I ended up getting transferred to a different hospital in Kharkiv. They transferred me to like a civilian hospital because I guess that military hospital was too overrun. Like we were sleeping in the hallway, so they transferred me to like a civilian hospital. But then that civilian hospital also had other soldiers in it. But then I was like the only one. It's like now I wasn't with my friend. And now I was only with Ukrainians. So I was, basically alone because I don't speak Ukrainian. But one of the other soldiers that was there was nice. But he was like not really wounded, but he was there to get shrapnel out of his body or something, but he could like walk fine. But he was like, I remember that guy was pretty nice to me. It's like kind of he like show me around. And I remember like I was just worked on there. Like I remember so when I was in that Kharkiv military hospital, that was like the last time I ever asked for painkillers ever. Like I was in pain that night and I asked the doctor for like a shot or something. But then that was like the last time I ever asked for one. And every time after that, I just dealt with the pain. I figured like if you take the painkillers, it'll make your wound heal slower. I think that's how it works. So I didn't want to do it. But then after that, I remember at that civilian hospital, they would transfer me, and they told me like, "Oh, you're gonna go to Poltava. We're gonna transfer you to another hospital, and you'll go to a hospital in Poltava." And I said, oh, "Okay." And then I got on the train, and then they told me like, when I got on the train, they said, "Oh, you're going to Kyiv." And I said, "I'm going to Kyiv." They said I'm going to Poltava. Why I'm going to Kyiv? I'm supposed to go to Poltava. And then they said, "Oh no, like a spot opened up for you, so you get to go to Kyiv." I said, "Oh, okay." And then I got to Kyiv, and I went to this hospital, like it's a civilian hospital also. But then my friends, which is I don't know why they sent me there because my friend was more badly wounded, if you remember. And then they brought him to the main military hospital. They brought me to the civilian hospital. And the civilian hospital, what I was told, it was like a nice hospital, and it was used for like politicians and movie stars and like rich people before the war. But when I was there, it was all soldiers. Um, but yeah, I just stayed there until they let me off on medical leave, and then I got on medical leave, and they gave me like a month of medical leave, which I actually overstayed, so I was AWOL, and I overstayed my 30 days without showing back up. But during that time, I just had one of my friends come to live with me, and then my other friend who visited us in that Kharkiv hospital, he ended up staying with me. So I rented an apartment while I was healing. And then my other friend, who was more badly wounded, he never got a medical leave or something because he was worsely wounded. So we were just visiting him like every day or every other day. We had to go to the main military hospital, and I was on crutches at that time, so I was like crutching through the city, like taking the train through the city on crutches and stuff.
Riding e-scooters.
Yeah, there's a video on my YouTube channel on the shorts where I'm riding an e-scooter. But that was my first time ever on an e-scooter when my friend took that video.
Really? You'd never used one in America?
No, I used it. Well, I used another one in Ukraine before that, but I mean like my first time ever riding it when I'm wounded.
Oh, okay.
But no, I don't think I ever used one in America.
Dude, those are fun to ride. Anyways.
They don't have them where I live because I'm not from the city.
Yeah, makes sense. Your state's so small, though. I'm not trying to dox you, but Your state's so small. I mean, the city can't be far away. Not like fucking Texas. Anyways, go on.
I live in a small town, like a little bit of a small town. Yeah, I don't know. After that, I was just in the. So I remember, yeah. So like I said, I overstayed my leave. They gave me like 30 days leave, but I didn't show up in time. I reported back like maybe a few days after that or something. But then when I showed back up, I had to show back up to the main military hospital where we were visiting my friends before. But it was kind of confusing because it was like I was a foreigner and I don't know the language, and then I don't know what to do. Like when I was supposed to show back up, like I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, "Well, where do I go? Right? Like who do I show up to?" And it was kind of confusing. So I showed up to that main military hospital where my friend was in, which if my friend was never there and I didn't try to find my friend, I probably would have never known to go there. So it's kind of a blessing that I even knew that, and like a weird coincidence. But I remember like when I showed up to that doctor and then he came to evaluate me, he told me like I'll start my physical therapy. And well, first he said, "Well, why did you like overstay? Like you're, like why you're like AWOL?" And I just told him like I wasn't really sure to where to go. And he just kind of forgot about it and didn't ask me again about it. And then he said, "Oh, you're gonna start your physical therapy."
Wait, just to be sure, that was a
And
complete
then
fucking lie, though, right? Like, you didn't. I mean, not that you didn't know where to go, but you just didn't show up because you didn't want to.
I mean, I was only like a few days extra, and I guess like I don't know. It was only like that weekend I overstayed.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, yeah, I didn't really know exactly where to go. I was like, maybe I go here, but I'm not sure. I mean, it's kind of confusing. But I mean, it wasn't a complete lie. It was like a 20% lie,
It was
maybe.
a half truth.
I don't know, but yeah. But then he told me, "Oh, you're gonna start your physical therapy." So, and then I was like kind of scared, and I was like, and he was like, "Yeah, and we're gonna remove your cast." I was like, "You're gonna remove my cast?" I was like, "I need that." He was like, "No, it's fine. Like, you're already healed." I was like, "Why are you gonna remove my cast? I need that." And then he told me, "Walk." And I was like, "Walk?" I was like, how do you expect me to walk? I have a broken leg. He's like, "No, we're gonna start your physical therapy. Walk." He was like very forceful, like that harsh Ukrainian accent. "Walk now." I was like, "Okay, I'll try." And I tried to put like first time ever trying to put pressure on that leg again. I was like trying to put pressure on it. And it just like did not, it basically didn't work. Like he still let me do it on my crutches, but he was like, put pressure on it while you're using your crutches. It's like not gonna work. Like, but he's right. Like, you need to start physical therapy soon. But I had no idea about any of that. I just don't want like my leg to break again, like putting pressure on that. But then I remember like they put me up in the military hospital again. And like before, I was just done with hospitals. I was so tired of being in the hospital. Like that's why I felt bad for my friend too, because I know what it feels like. And I was just so done with hospitals. And I remember I stayed for one night there, and then I told them like, "Oh no, I'm gonna leave." And they said, "You can't just leave." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna leave. I don't want to be here anymore." I was like done with that. Like I just wanted to go back to like living in an apartment in Kyiv, and and I said, "I can just have an apartment on my own, and I can just come like during the day for my appointment, my medical appointment." And then like, what's the problem? Because now you have an extra bed for another soldier. And they're like, "Oh well, you can't leave now. You have to stay the night, and you have to talk about that in the morning." And then I said the same thing in the morning, like I'm gonna leave. And then they said, "Oh, I'll go talk over there to this office." And I went over there, and like bureaucracy and blah blah blah. And then I eventually got my leave, but then I don't know how to do my outpatient appointments. So then I guess I just didn't do it. and I didn't do any physical therapy in Ukraine. And then I just stayed in Kyiv like another week or two or something, and then I just like said, oh, I'm just gonna go home. I'm just gonna cancel my contract and go home, and I'm just gonna like do physical therapy through the VA when I get home because I have that for free as a veteran.
I have a
And
question.
that's just what happened.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna say his call sign because he agreed to do an interview too, so it's all right. But did Orange? Did he leave when you left, or did he just stay there? I guess I could just ask him in the interview,
Yeah,
but I'm
Orange was
curious.
my friend who came to help me. He helped me get my stuff from the front line. Yeah, he ended up staying after that.
Like
He ended
he,
up joining the Legion because
yeah, okay, he didn't leave. Okay.
he ended up staying in the Legion. I mean, he ended up going home after that for some time, but like when I left, he didn't leave. He ended up joining the Legion. He was never in the military before that. Um, yeah, I remember he helped me get my stuff from the front line. So when I was on that medical leave, we actually went back to the front line, and one of my other friends, he drove me there with one of the vehicles, and we went like to this place, to our old base. But at that time, like the Kharkiv counteroffensive already happened, so all that area was liberated, and all that place was freed. The Russians were gone, but I was trying to find my stuff, all my gear. I wanted to send it home in the mail, and nobody knew where it was. And then like I was trying to text like my company commander, and he wouldn't reply to me, and I was trying to ask people where my stuff was. And then I asked my friend like, "Where's my stuff?" Like one of my friends who was there that we met on the front line, he was like gonna break his contract. He never got wounded, but he was just gonna break his contract and leave. And I asked him, "Well, where do you think my stuff would be?" He's like, "Oh, I saw it here last time, and it was like at this place close to the front, like the new front, because the Russians retreated." So they brought my stuff not like to me, but they brought my stuff farther away from me. It didn't make any sense. And then so I had to go there. But my friend who was driving me in charge of this car, like he wouldn't want to go because he's like, "Oh, I don't know if it's there." And like, "Well, let's just go see." And I had to convince them very, very hard to convince them to go there. And then my stuff ended up being there, and so was my friend's stuff. So I got my friend's stuff, like some of my friend's stuff too. Um, and yeah, but yeah, I basically ended up breaking my contract, and I ended up going home, and I did physical therapy with the VA, and then I could walk again.
So when you well, we're basically at the end here. Before we go on to the next part, which is the question and the more specific questions I want, I guess this could go in there too, but it does go in with the ending. Can you tell me about the experience at the airport
Oh yeah,
in
so
America?
when I was going home, well, I'll start it like this. When I was going home through Poland, the airport guards, like, they were just super cool with me. Like, they would just let me go. Like, they didn't even make me go through the metal detector. I think I was at the airport at, was it Krakow, maybe? One of the airports I went through. Like, the Polish border guards, they just saw, like, I was a wounded Ukrainian soldier. And they just, like, said, oh, well, like, they didn't even make me go through the airport. Like, didn't make me, take anything off. They just, like, pass me through. They're just, like, super cool. And then, like, then when I got home to the U.S., like I ended up going through Denmark, and then I stayed a night in Denmark, and then I went for a connecting flight through Iceland. But like then once I got into the Boston airport, like the customs CBP was just super harsh on me, and like so I went to the first like the primary inspection point with like the normal customs officers, and she asked me like, "Oh, where were you?" And I said I was in Europe. Said, "What countries in Europe?" And I said, Poland, Ukraine. And then she said, "Were you fighting there?" And I said, "Yeah." And then she said, oh, "Okay, wait." And then some other customs officers came up to me, and they like, there was like I forget, like one or two of them came up to me, and then they said, "Oh, follow me." and I was like wounded. I was on crutches, so I had to follow him on crutches through the airport place, and then like they brought me to the secondary inspection station, which was like downstairs from that place or something, almost like in a basement. And then like I was waiting there for a little bit. Well, like the first officer dropped me off, and I was waiting there, and then another officer came, and then he was trying to like be good cop with me at first, and he's trying to be cool, and then he was like said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna need to search your bag." Said, "Oh, okay." And then he was just kind of like asking me like some, like he was trying to like be a friend, trying to like ask me some cool questions first, and then he saw my patches, and then he said, "Oh yeah, this is cool. Like I have a lot of patches for my police officer things also." And then he then he said, "Okay, so the last thing I have to do is I have to search through your phone." And then he said, "Tell me how to unlock it." So I showed him how to unlock my phone, and then he went like he didn't even search it in front of me. He just went, took my phone, and brought it into a back room, and then I had to wait there. And then he comes back and he starts being like bad cop with me, and then he's saying like, "Oh, why do you have like this like first, because before he said, 'Oh, did you ever join Azov?' And I said no, and he said, what unit were you in?" I was like, "Oh, I was in 49th Battalion." So he didn't join the Legion. I was like, "No, I didn't join the Legion." He's like, "Oh, you must be an Azov." And then I said no. And then he took my phone, and then he comes back and he says, "Oh, you said you were never in Azov, but you have text messages that say that you want to join Azov, but they won't take you. Why would you want to join Azov?" And then they're asking me all these questions, and then they say, "Oh, you ever meet like neo-Nazis over there? Have you ever met white supremacists over there? Are you a white supremacist yourself? Why did you go over there?" And all these questions. And then I just started like telling him like, just like leave me alone. Like, I'm not gonna answer your questions. Like, I'm not a white supremacist. And then they just like took my phone again and brought it back to their room. And then they came back, and then they started questioning me like about like militia stuff this time, because I was in like some militias and like doing like volunteer border work. And then they said, "Oh, well, you were in 3%ers, or you're in this group, and like you have like pictures from you in the Boogaloo rally, like during George Floyd. Like, what are you doing?" They're like, "Are you a white supremacist?" I just like didn't want to answer any questions. Said, I'm not going to answer questions. Like, I don't know anything about that stuff." And then they said they told me about this group, and I'd never heard of it in my whole life. And they said, "Are you part of the NSC 113?" Said, "I don't know what that is." Said, "Oh, the NSC 113 is active here in the Boston area. Are you part of them?" I said, "No, what's that?" I looked it up later. I guess it stands for National Socialist Club. I don't know. I guess they're Nazis, but I'm not a Nazi. But I never heard of them before. And yeah, they're just interrogating me. They asked me all these questions like, "Are you a white supremacist? Are you this? Blah, blah, blah." All these questions. And then I told them, like, at one point I was so mad at them. And I went into their back room where they were like kept going. And I went into their back room where it said like authorized only. And I knocked on the door, and I tried to open it, and then they opened it. And then I said, what are you doing with me here? Like, why am I here? Like, I was just fighting against the enemy of America. Now I'm just being held here by my own government for doing something good. Like, just let me go. And then they were like so mad at me, and they were like, "You're not supposed to come back here. This is authorized only. Like, never come back here. Do you understand?" And like, all this stuff. And I was like, "No, I don't understand. Like, why are you being a Nazi Gestapo to me when I'm just trying to return to my own country?" And then I remember like at a certain time there was this like guy who came. I don't know if he was being genuinely like a good cop, but he told me he was like a former combat veteran from Iraq, and he was telling me like, "Oh yeah, I told the guys like this is going far enough, and that's like they kept you here too long, because it was like 5 hours at this time." And then the other guys, they kept telling me like, "Oh, like we can hold you here legally for 8 hours." I was like, what's the point? They said after 8 hours we have to let you go because you're a citizen. So you're gonna enter no matter what, but we can hold you here after 8 hours, so you should answer our questions. And then that other
Wow,
guy, he
that's
was
just like
telling me like,
harassment. What the fuck?
yeah. And then, but that guy, that guy who was that other customs officer who was an Iraq veteran, I don't know, maybe he was being genuinely cool with me because he was like asking me some cool questions, and then I remember this one thing he said to me, and it really sticks in my mind. I don't forget it because it was the first time someone ever tells me this. And he said, "You're a combat veteran now, you know that?" And I kind of laughed about it. I was like, "Oh yeah, like whatever." And he said, "Oh look, like you laugh about it, but it's true. Like you're a combat veteran now." But then they ended up just taking my phone away, and they ended up taking my phone away, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna keep your phone for further examination, but you can go now." And that was after like 6+ hours. And then apparently, like my mom, like well, my cousin was coming to pick me up, but my mom like knew something was wrong, so she kept calling them at that time. And then they said like they told her like, "Oh, we can't tell you anything." And she said, "Can't you just tell me if he's even there?" And they're like, "No." And then like they sent me my phone back after like a week. But and then they told me something like, "Oh, like what if it was actually that combat veteran guy? He told me like, "Oh, like would you be willing to sit down with one of us like at over coffee or something at a later date?" I said, "Probably not." And I said, "What agency?" Because I thought it would be like an FBI guy. And then he said, "No, it's just like a guy who's wearing the same uniform as me, like customs." And I said, "Well, I don't know, maybe." And then he said, "Oh, okay." But they never called me for any of that. Yeah, that's it. That's my story.